story begins on a cold, windy night with a ninja being attacked by a man with white hair. The rising star of martial soul, Baek Mugyol, after the attack, looks up and shouts, saying he has finally found the celestial demon Asura. Asura looks down, emanating a dark and sinister aura, making the other warriors uneasy. Baek reflects that he did not expect Asura to maintain such presence even alone, as expected from the demonic cultist who dominated an era. A cold and bitter face, a legend among the legends of the demonic path. Leader of the celestial demonic cult, the celestial demon Asura is the supreme existence worshipped by demonic cultists, for whose will they risked their lives. It was only a matter of time before the world would be under his feet until he, Mugyol, appeared and asked Asura for his last words. The celestial demon smiles and lets out a powerful scream, releasing even more of his demonic aura, causing Baek and his allies to suffer intense pressure. Nevertheless, Mugyol thinks that this spirit is enough to be used as a sacrifice for his heroic tales, and, smiling, concludes that it would be boring to end it with just one move, so he will play a little first. He shouts at Asura that his cruelty ends today and calls him to fight. The demon, with a serious expression, asks Mugyol to spare him, which confuses Mugyol and makes him wonder if he's hallucinating. After all, his opponent is the celestial demon Asura, the supreme existence of the demonic path, and it is impossible for him to abandon his dignity and beg for his life. But the demon insists, saying that apparently it didn't sound desperate enough and asks please to spare his life. Baek then uses the sound transmission skill and hears Asura saying that he will live hidden, as if he had died, hiding in the depths of the mountains and will never set foot in Junghu again, begging once more not to be annihilated. This drives Mugyol nearly insane, shouting that it is impossible. He thinks the plan he made to become a hero with this decisive battle turned to dust because the leader of the demonic cult is a coward. While his battle companions are confused, Mugyol begins to tremble and hears Asura explaining that he needs to maintain appearances so he can only beg using sound transmission. Even so, he prepares and charges to attack, saying that if he is afraid of losing his reputation, he should be exterminated, which causes the demon to panic, asking Baek to reconsider his choice. But Mugyol ignores him and continues advancing without hesitation, questioning if Asura intends to underestimate the martial arts he possesses. Noticing that he won't change his mind, the powerful demon wonders if this is really where his end will be. Then the two face each other in an extremely fast combat. The battle ended in just one move and Baek Mugyol, who was confident of victory, lost his life in a single blow. 22 years later, within the demonic cult, Asura wonders why Baek didn't use his strongest move that day, and thanks to that, he can protect his current position and train the next generation, so whatever Baek did doesn't matter. Still, as the celestial demon only cared about power, his three sons fought for the position of successor of the demonic cult, and they are all buried. Suddenly, someone arrives asking if he is all right. This is the only descendant of the celestial demon Asura Yugang. Asura thinks that his son is different because he was raised not to be blinded by things like power and strength. This is because precautions were taken to ensure he becomes the strongest leader of the cult. The demon says he is fine and that his son doesn't need to worry, reflecting that someday his son will truly surpass him and become the strongest leader of the cult. Watching Yugang, a man says he never imagined the leader could be so benevolent, even though he is so terrifying, for indeed the next leader of the cult must be Lord Yugang. Another, crumpling a paper with envy, responds that this is obvious since he is the descendant of the celestial demon lord Asura. After some time, elsewhere, a man writes calmly in his office until someone knocks on the door and he asks who it is. Then, a man introduces himself as Sang Sagak, an expert in torture techniques, greeting the young leader of the cult. With a bizarre smile, he informs that, by his master's orders, he will report the progress of the torture of a member of the Orthodox sects. This makes Yugang think that his father must be testing his qualifications as the next leader of the cult, so he asks Sang to report what happened. The expert then says that the criminal was interrogated in the underground prison for a total of 3 days. On the first day, after flaying the thighs down to the toes, they soaked him in salt water. On the second day, they let a pig eat the criminal's feathers. By the third day, the prisoner's body was only intact up to his waist. Proud of his work, Sang reflects that even in the celestial demon cult, he is the only one capable of inflicting such a level of pain on someone, which should satisfy the young leader of the cult. Until suddenly, slamming his hands on the table, Yugang shouts that it's not enough, leaving the specialist confused as he thought he had gone overboard. Trembling, he can't believe what he's hearing, as he truly thought he had gone too far, and concludes that Yugang is indeed the descendant of the celestial demon lord Asura. With this, he bows again and says he will apply even more brutal methods from now on. He then leaves the room, leaving Yugang alone. Irritated, Yugang reflects that he spoke without thinking. Frustrated, he wonders if his words will really make Sang inflict even more pain on the enemy, as he doesn't believe they use such cruel methods, just because the boy was snooping around the demonic cult, concluding that they themselves are truly abominable. Soon he realizes he has crumpled the paper in his hands, which says that Yugang is unfit to lead the celestial demon cult, making him remember that he didn't manage to speak to him that day. Disappointed in himself, he reflects that he really doesn't want to become the leader of the celestial demon cult and just wants a normal life. He remembers that everyone misinterprets him, recalling when a woman asked where he had gone, and he answered that he went to the forge to get rid of some trash he found on the road. This made other sect members admire him, thinking he had found some trash from an orthodox sect on the road and revered him, saying he had done a good job, just as expected from the next leader of the cult. This left him astonished, as he had just picked up some random trash on the road. Yugang reflects that, at this rate, it will be impossible to live a normal life in the demon cult, and he needs to speak to his father immediately before he makes him assume the leader's position. But suddenly, a man appears running, calling for him, saying that something has happened. This is one of the 6 elders of the demon cult, Somyun Magun, who, with a smile on his face, informs him that Yugang's father is in critical condition. This shocks him, and, after some time, he finds himself carrying a portrait of his father who passed away suddenly. This makes him stop and think about how things got to this point. Going back to the past when Yugang received the news that Asura was in critical condition, he immediately went to where he was and asked what had happened. Then, an elder explained that the injuries from the battle had worsened, and it had become impossible for Asura to hold on any longer. Soon, Asura opens his eyes and asks if Yugang is there. He confirms and asks his father to conserve his strength, noticing that he is struggling to even speak. Still, the cult leader extends his hand and asks his son to listen carefully and says that from now on, he is the leader of the cult, which terrifies Yugang completely. After that, Yugang goes to his chambers completely shaken, concluding that he truly couldn't avoid becoming the leader of the demon cult. He enters the room and with a sharp look, notices someone he has never seen before and asks who he is. The man then begins to approach, apologizing for the rudeness, and before Yugang could respond, he is attacked directly in both shoulders. Immediately, he feels an excruciating pain and wonders when that man attacked him exactly at the pressure points. Without letting him react, the man grabs him and says that he will take him away. Then he slightly begins to run from there, carrying Yugang with him. Being carried, the protagonist realizes that, due to being attacked at the pressure points, he cannot move and needs help. Promptly, other members of the demon cult begin to chase the man, demanding that he stop immediately. Yugang notices that they're the evil spirit hunting squad and the Yaksa elimination squad, which makes him think they'll take care of the monster carrying him. However, before he could ask for help, he hears the squad saying that they need to capture both as soon as possible because they need to exterminate Yugang, which terrifies him even more. Soon, someone announces that whoever eliminates Yugang will be well rewarded, and the squad members confirm that it will be done quickly. In the blink of an eye, the two are surrounded by an army of enemies, all armed to the teeth. Regardless, the mysterious man draws his sword and tells the protagonist that they will escape from there. With extreme ease, the mysterious man brutally annihilates the members of the squad, leaving the protagonist stunned, wondering how he defeated so many soldiers so effortlessly. Suddenly, one of the soldiers tries to attack from above, but the mysterious man quickly notices, and, with a swift movement of his sword, strikes the soldier down cruelly. Soon, 2 more soldiers approach, advancing without hesitation, but are unable to strike, falling lifeless with their weapons broken on the ground. This infuriates the leader of the evil spirit hunting squad, San Seoseng, who shouts, ordering his men to capture Yugang until someone extends a hand. It is Somyun asking them to stop. San then warns that if they let Yugang escape, they will pay the price. Bukpyeong, the leader of the Yaksa elimination squad, confirms, emphasizing that they must hunt Yugang immediately. However, Somyun says they can eliminate Yugang whenever they want, but if they kill the other man, the demonic cult will face a great disaster. He explains that the man is the great plan of the celestial demon Asura, Pung Cheon, his disciple. Somyun says he has ensured they will not lose Yugang, and the rest of them should dispose of the bodies and gather the elders, as they will begin the ceremony for the ascension of the 16th leader of the cult. Meanwhile, leaping between the trees in the forest, the mysterious man continues carrying the protagonist. Yugang, irritated, states that an entire day has passed and questions who the hell he is and why he is doing this. However, the man ignores him and simply says they will soon reach Shanxi. After some time, he stops and begins to release the pressure points on Yugang, making him feel immediately relieved and wonder if he's finally free. Suddenly, the mysterious man kneels and, saying he is a loyal servant, greets the cult leader, praising that he was made solely to assist him. He then reveals his name, Poong Cheon. This makes the protagonist question if his father created and trained Poong, so he asks if Somyun Magun was the one who led the rebellion of the demon cult, which Poong promptly confirms. The protagonist reflects that now everything makes sense. He realizes that Somyun, who has always been loyal to him, betrayed him, which for him is perfect. With a malicious smile, the protagonist thinks that if Somyun so desperately wants to be the leader of the cult, he only needs to accept. And with that, he can withdraw from life in the cult and live peacefully. However, Poong is a problem, so he needs to quickly think of an excuse to send him away. Yugong then says that he chose the wrong person to dedicate such devotion to, because the leader of the cult is now Somyun Magun, so Poong can leave. However, Cheon responds that the only leaders of the cult are the celestial demon Asura, and he, Yugong, and that he must withdraw that order. This infuriates the protagonist, who thinks to himself that the guy is terrifying and could easily defeat him. He then emphasizes that Poong must obey his commands, and questions why he isn't following the order, asking if Poong is disrespecting him. Before he could continue, Poong approaches with his hand extended. This makes the protagonist almost wet himself in fear and close his eyes, expecting an attack. And suddenly, a colossal explosion occurs, visible from a distance. But, to Yugong's surprise, Cheon had hit his head against the rocks and, hitting again, says he must punish himself for disrespecting Yugong. The protagonist, closing his eyes in shock from the impact, says he must stop that absurd behavior. And Poong responds that he will continue punishing himself until the cult leader tells him to stop. With that, the protagonist says that, as the leader of the cult, he orders him to stop right now, which Poong promptly does. Yugong then wonders what the hell his father created and says they must first find an inn, then descend the mountain, and questions how much money Poong has left from Asura. But Cheon responds that he didn't bring money, so they will have to sleep in the mountains. This nearly gives the protagonist a heart attack, pointing out that Poong had said he would assist him, so he promptly apologizes. Suddenly, they notice people approaching, and Cheon says that anyway, they won't have time to eat or sleep as people have already arrived to welcome them. A man with an eye patch says in a serious tone that they are causing too much trouble in the verdant forest territory and therefore will not leave there alive. Observing around, they notice several soldiers pointing arrows at them, making the protagonist reflect that based on the energy he's feeling, these must be elite members of the verdant forest bandits. He thinks that he can't make the situation worse, so maybe he should start by apologizing. To his surprise, Poong Cheon begins shouting, telling the scrawny pirate to shut up, and questioning if he knows who the man threatening them is. Noticing the immense pressure exerted by Cheon, the bandits are frightened, and not just them. Yugong is also in shock, thinking they're screwed. He asks what Poong is doing and urges him to apologize, explaining that he lost control. But before he could speak, the bandit leader shouts that they must have grown tired of living and orders his men to attack immediately. Without hesitation, they begin attacking, firing a hail of arrows at them. Poong starts to draw his sword and with a single movement, deflects all the arrows, shouting again, saying he already ordered the bandit leader to shut his filthy mouth. The bandit is in shock when he realizes Poong used the sword wall technique, something few can execute, and orders his subordinates to retreat. Suddenly, he notices two hands around his face and hears a voice telling him not to lose his head. Then, with a swift motion, Poong Cheon twists the bandit leader's neck. Seeing this, Yugong immediately shouts for him not to execute people unnecessarily, but Poong says he didn't execute that man, leaving Yugong completely confused. Cheon says that his master is tired and asks them to take him to the hideout immediately, leaving the protagonist completely disoriented and thinking that the guy is really insane. Moments later, at the verdant forest residence, Poong arrives, kicking the door open and noticing 3 people in front of him. Disappointed, he comments that the place is extremely inadequate, little better than a stable, and Yugong asks him not to be so rude. With that, he bows and apologizes to his master, and one of the people in front of them comments that the man speaks without any fear. A little embarrassed, Yugong apologizes for arriving so late at night until suddenly he notices a beautiful girl in front of him and wonders if she is an angel who fell from the sky. Shocked by the girl's beauty, the protagonist questions how such a cutie could be with the verdant forest bandits, leading him to think she might be a hostage. He then immediately tells Poong discreetly that they need to rescue that woman at all costs. However, the girl starts to approach, saying it's a beautiful night, and commenting that she'd like to know where those 2 idiots came from. This shocks both of them, and Poong immediately starts drawing his sword, charging at her quickly, calling her rude. The young woman immediately reacts, launching an attack and telling him to shut up. She throws 2 giant shurikens at Poong Cheon, who, noticing them, easily cuts one in half. And seeing the other one returning in his direction, he jumps to dodge and, observing the blade still in the air, moves toward the weapon. Managing to wrap it around his sword, he performs a spinning move and counters, throwing it toward the girl, who, even surprised, manages to dodge at the last moment, avoiding a powerful attack that destroys the wall upon hitting it. The girl looks back and sees the huge hole in the wall caused by the impact and, furious, insults Poong, calling him a damn bastard. In any case, before she could do anything, Poong Chan was already behind her, holding her by the head and saying that enough is enough. But this doesn't intimidate her, and smiling, she asks if he really thinks it's over. Soon they notice they're surrounded by armed men, and the man with the sword orders Poong to take his hands off the girl if he doesn't want to see Yugong's head roll. Realizing the situation, Poong shouts for his master, and the woman asks if he only now understands the situation they're in, questioning if he prefers to see that kid's brain exposed on the ground. With that, the bandits start laughing, making the protagonist angry, and without hesitation, he drives a dagger into the back of the man with the sword and another into the man with the axe. Both immediately feel excruciating and agonizing pain, and noticing the situation, the other bandits can't believe what they're seeing. Both they and the protagonist step back from the two fallen men. Yugong then lands and, controlling his daggers, says they are nothing special. While the protagonist is nervous about the situation, Poong, still holding the girl, celebrates, saying this is what was expected of his master, pointing out that it was an impressive strike of the silver soul. But Yugong responds, shouting, questioning if he didn't hear the order to apologize, emphasizing that he never pays attention to the orders given. This catches Cheon by surprise, and he immediately realizes he disobeyed the cult leader's orders. Then, Poong Chan begins to bow, pushing the girl to the floor and saying he will pay for the unforgivable mistake he made while the protagonist asks him to stop. Suddenly, the girl, with her face bruised by Poong, says that those two are worse than the bandits, and that no one makes her back down. However, they put on quite a show. This makes both of them glare at her with rage, and without hesitation, Poong Chan prepares a powerful punch, and only their screams are heard. Sometime later, Yugong relaxes peacefully in a bathtub, and comments that Junghu truly is an unpredictable place. He remembers Poong breaking the girl's face beside him and reflects that he never wants to meet her again. After the bath, he gets dressed and walks through the hallway, thinking that so much happened in just one night and that he only wants to rest. He recalls when the girl offered him her room to rest, something that surprised him because he hadn't expected much from a small hideout in the mountains. But apparently, it had everything one could need: a painting of a beautiful landscape, a scented candle to relax the mind and body, and, most importantly, a soft bed that brought happiness. But soon, he notices something is wrong and, upon looking, sees that the girl is there, tied up with an angry look. Immediately, he stands up, calling for Cheon, who promptly responds. Yugong points at the tied-up girl and asks how he dares to do that to the young lady. Poong then asks if he was fond of her and says that if that is his wish, he will bring whatever is necessary. This makes the protagonist even angrier, saying that Poong misunderstood and that, although he thinks the girl is pretty, she is rude and only speaks curses. With difficulty, the girl, with a trembling voice, comments that Yugong is actually kind of cute and could lie down with her. This drives him mad with rage, and noticing that Poong had restricted her by pressure points, he demands that he release her immediately. Poong quickly complies, and the girl comments that it's a relief to finally be free. The protagonist then apologizes, introduces himself, and asks her name. She then introduces herself as Sun Yakran and asks if he is the son of some noble bastard. While fixing the bed, Yugong reflects that the girl never stops cursing for a second and responds that he's tired, so they should sleep soon. A little embarrassed, the girl says it's fine and asks him to get to the point. Noticing that she also misunderstood him, he says that it's not what she thinks and that they will sleep separately. Then the girl, already undressing, says that he has a decent face but is avoiding that contact too much, questioning if he is impotent. With those words, the protagonist nearly has a heart attack, turning completely red, and Sun, watching discreetly, thinks that he fell for her provocation. Not noticing a presence behind her, she reflects that she will take advantage when Yugong lowers his guard without clothes and will finish him off once and for all. But calmly, the protagonist closes his hands, hugs her around the waist, and throws her upside down, questioning who she's calling impotent. With the move, the protagonist throws the girl out of the building and, seeing Sun fly away, Poong comments that he's proud of his master. Sometime later, still at night, by a beautiful waterfall, the protagonist reflects that he truly won't be able to sleep because of that crazy girl, and wonders if Jung-hoo is full of lunatics. And the most dangerous of them all is Poong Cheon, who managed to counter all attacks effortlessly. Suddenly, he notices a fish swimming nearby and throws his dagger, but only swats the little creature away. Reflecting to himself, he thinks that if Poong stays in Jung-hoo with those abilities, without a doubt, his end will be terrible because he can eliminate him at any time as he is always by his side. Yugang remembers that his father left Jiang-hu on its knees and still only taught him the silver soul slash, making him question why. Suddenly, he notices something and realizes someone is hiding behind a nearby tree. Quickly, the person disappears, leaving the protagonist impressed with how fast the individual vanished. But soon, the person starts approaching from behind, and Yugang quickly notices and prepares his dagger, but is astonished to see that, in fact, it's Pung Qian, saying that it's getting cold and they should head back. This almost gives the protagonist another heart attack, and sitting down, he asks if Pung is insane. Noticing his hand trembling, he realizes he was tense without even noticing. Yugang calls Pung to sit beside him, but he replies that he prefers to stay standing. The protagonist insists, saying there is something he needs to ask, so it's better if he sits. Reluctantly, Cheon sits on the ground. Yugang then begins to speak, saying that his father never allowed him to learn even the basic palm techniques, and that of all the martial arts, he was only allowed to learn the silver soul slash. He continues saying that even so, his father appointed him as the leader of the demon cult, and then asks if that contradiction makes any sense and what Asura had in mind by doing that. The subordinate then explains that the silver soul slash is not a weak martial art and that Yugong possesses deep inner strength. He responds that just inner strength is not enough to dominate Jiang-hu, not even the demon cult, and questions again why his father only let him learn the slash. Pung then explains that, in fact, he must become the supreme martial master. This frightens him, and standing up in the blink of an eye, he says that this is absurd, questioning if Cheon really thinks he can challenge anyone in Jiang-hu in his current state. Pung then points out that what he seeks does not exist in the demon cult and that it is not yet time, stating that this is all he can say for now. This makes the protagonist even more nervous. He then asks Yugang to return and rest, as they need to go to the verdant forest base the next morning. Confused, Yugang asks what he is talking about and why they must go there. Cheon, in a serious tone, says it is to begin conquering the world. This enrages the protagonist, who rushes to throw a punch, shouting that it's nonsense. But when he strikes Pung, his arm almost breaks. Immediately, he feels overwhelming pain while the bodyguard remains calm. Looking at his own hand with tears in his eyes, he reflects that he never wanted to be the leader of the demon cult, let alone conquer the world, which makes him question if he really has no choice. Suddenly, he sees Pung in front of him with a sinister look, saying that he will guide his master on the path to becoming the supreme regent. This terrifies him completely, mentally calling out for his mother. The next morning, already heading to the main base in a carriage, Yugang reflects that Pung truly doesn't care about what he wants, because he would never want to be going to the base. But suddenly he hears someone asking if he has a question. It's Sun, still with her face bruised, asking why she is in the carriage with him. Observing the girl, he thinks to himself that she should ask Pung, who probably dragged her there. But the girl, impatient, warns that she is waiting for an answer and calls him master. But the protagonist remains silent, which deeply irritates Sun Yakren. She starts shouting, calling him an idiot and questioning if, besides stealing riches, he also wants to have her body, pointing out that Yugang would have to be, at the very least, the leader of the demon cult to be on her level. In any case, Yu remains cold and calculating until he hears Sun say that if he were at least the next leader of the cult, she would consider him, but since he isn't, he should stay quiet, calling him a small fish. Irritated by her words, the protagonist sticks his head out the window and calls for Cheon, who promptly responds. He points at Sun, shouting that he can't stand that brat anymore and that they should leave her there. Then, without hesitation, Pung stops the carriage, opens the door, and hears the girl screaming, asking if the protagonist thinks she will marry him just because they dragged her along. She also comments that Pung must have some serious issues in his head, but before she could finish the sentence, he grabs her by the head and, in the blink of an eye, twists Sun's neck, who immediately starts trembling in pain while Pung Qian tells the protagonist that she won't make noise anymore. Still, Yu stands up angrily, saying that that is not the issue and asking why he is forcing him to do this. After saying that, the protagonist reflects that, with those words, Pung will probably start banging his head somewhere and ask for forgiveness. But determined, he concludes that this time, he won't be shaken by that exaggeration. However, Pung doesn't do that and remains standing in front of the carriage, making the protagonist question what he is waiting for, and if he isn't going to ask for forgiveness. Then, the bodyguard bows, apologizing for the insolence and pointing out that he has decided to guide him from that day forward with the authority of being his teacher. This makes Yugang remember the previous night, when he commented that he was not in a condition to challenge anyone in Jianghu in his current state, making him realize that after saying that, Pung will be his master. Then, Qian takes control, saying that they will continue their journey and they move forward slightly. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, the protagonist reflects that his bodyguard is really smart and seeing the girl still with her neck twisted, wonders if he's really not going to turn her neck back, as Sun looks like a ghost. 2 days later, at the Lunar Blossom Pavilion, the protagonist sits at a table, and while the waiter serves, he reflects that he's already tired of this. Remembering when Puung turned the girl's neck back after he said it would attract too much attention, he thinks that at least that was something good so far. It's not long before the waiter announces that the food is ready, and upon seeing the beautiful dishes on the table, he remembers it's been a long time since he's had a good meal. But observing the waiter, he thinks that the guy looks suspicious, or maybe he's just becoming paranoid dealing with those two lunatics every day. So he eagerly grabs the chopsticks, but before he could touch the food, he sees Poong holding the waiter by the arm, and with that same dark expression, asks how long he's worked there. Showing fear in his eyes, the waiter says it's been 3 years. And again, with that look, Poong asks if he always gets nervous when serving someone. This makes the waiter sweat coldly, thinking it will be his end. But Yugong interrupts, asking what Poong is doing, since the waiter is just a normal guy. The waiter then bows and thanks the young master, commenting that he got nervous because of the beauty of the young lady at the table. Immediately, Sun starts to brag, saying that the waiter has good taste. After all this chaos, Yu says they should eat quickly, which Poong agrees with. He then gets ready to grab the food, excited to finally eat something delicious, but notices Sun Yakran emitting a colossal energy and with an angry expression, which makes him wonder why. Sun then says they're being disrespected, which confuses the protagonist. She then throws everything up, saying that the table next to them received 7 dumplings per serving, while they only got 6. It doesn't take long for the food she threw to fall on the protagonist and Poong's heads, making both of them deeply irritated. But she continues, questioning where the manager is, because she'll close that dump, not noticing Cheon approaching from behind. And again, in the blink of an eye, the bodyguard twists her neck and carries her away, apologizing, while she, still angry, demands that they bring the cook to finish off the damned bastard. Other customers, stunned, comment on the twisted neck, wondering if that's really possible. Suddenly, the waiter returns, holding the protagonist by the shoulder and saying they haven't paid for the food. And Yu, quickly turning around, screams that they only got 6 dumplings per serving. Sometime later elsewhere, a man takes a powerful blow to the stomach, and the one who struck him questions if conspiring with the waiters is the best he can do. Agonizing in pain, Hauk Shimsu, leader of the demon cult's assassination squad, says he didn't expect that woman to flip the table and asks please for another chance, calling the guy hitting him uncle. Hauk reflects that he definitely can't get used to that face and wonders how he has a child's face despite being over 60 years old. He remembers hearing that he got that way because he was cursed for eating human flesh when he was a child. He then thinks that if he asks for mercy for failing, his life won't be spared, and with that he says this time he will succeed. Benjamin Button says he will forgive him this time because they are relatives, and hopes he takes advantage of the opportunity. Sometime later, moving quickly between the trees, Hauk thinks the Shadow Squad will lure Poong Cheon as far as they can and concludes that the Yin and Yang twin demons will take care of the young cult leader. Suddenly, he signals for them to stop and, observing the protagonist standing by the window, asks them to remember that this is the last chance. Then, one of the demons takes an arrow from the quiver and aims precisely at Yugong's head. Meanwhile, the protagonist observes a couple walking down the street and reflects that common love can be found everywhere. He wishes he could be like normal people. Suddenly, Sun appears beside him, calling him an idiot and asking if he's not going to bed soon, leaving Yu frustrated as he realizes the reality he is in. Looking at the girl with a bizarre expression, he mentally insults Poong for having to share a room with that crazy woman. Soon she begins shouting, saying her silky skin needs a good rest and questioning whether Yugong will take responsibility if her skin wrinkles. In response, the protagonist begins to close the window, saying he's going to bed. Suddenly, a demon shoots an arrow, which passes by the protagonist and narrowly grazes Sun. Immediately, they turn around, confused, not understanding what the hell is happening. This distracts the protagonist as a rain of arrows follows toward their backs. However, he quickly manages to dodge, crouching while the crazy girl jumps to evade. In shock, Sun says they almost hit her this time and questions Yu about what he got them into, to have them aiming at her too. Annoyed, the protagonist just listens in silence until Poong arrives, concerned for his master. Still at the window, he is hit by many arrows, but he ignores them completely, as none of them can harm him. Then, he asks if Yugong is okay, which he promptly confirms, stating he can handle the enemies. Poong, lowering his head, says he will do what was ordered. However, he begins to restrict the protagonist's pressure points, immobilizing him. Quickly, he picks him up and starts running, while Yu points out that he asked him to take care of the enemies and questions why he's being carried along. Poong lightly jumps from the window, leaving Sun behind, and says he can't leave him in such a dangerous place. This makes the protagonist wonder since when taking him into the middle of the enemy troop, who are firing arrows relentlessly is safer. Meanwhile, in desperation, Sun Yakran screams, asking if they're going to leave her there alone. However, she is ignored while Pungcheon quickly carries the protagonist through the trees. It doesn't take long before he draws his sword. Noticing the enemies, he delivers an incredibly powerful strike. Soon, another enemy approaches from behind, calling him a bastard. Cheon quickly observes, dodges the strike, and counterattacks, leaving a massive trail of destruction behind. The members of the Shadow Squadron notice he is approaching, and one of them shouts to the others to lure him farther away so that Hyuk can deal with the young leader. Before he could finish his sentence, he sees that Poong is already at his side with Yu. In the blink of an eye, Cheon attacks him mercilessly, questioning where he was looking. The squad member, with his neck twisted, wonders why the hell the cult's young leader is there. Meanwhile, in the room they were in, Hyuk appears with Yin and Yang and finds Sun. Surprised, he asks if Poong Cheon is gone. The girl, somewhat confused, says yes and claims to have no involvement with him. Immediately, Hyuk realizes he has failed again and recalls his uncle's words, saying that he would forgive him only this last time because they were relatives. Quickly, Yin and Yang exchange glances and without hesitation begin running toward the window. However, Hyuk warns the twin demons that there's no point in running and strikes them with a powerful magical attack, causing them to fall before him. With a bizarre look preparing to take his own life, Hyuk says they are already doomed. Without thinking twice, he executes himself. This terrifies Sun Yakran. She touches his body hesitantly, questioning whether all of that was really necessary and concluding that they chose the fastest way out. She promptly confirms that he is lifeless and comments that they are all crazy, wondering what kind of demon cultists place so little value on life. Suddenly, she notices someone else approaching quickly. As soon as he enters, she realizes it's Cheon, still carrying Yugung with him. After having his pressure points released again, the protagonist asks if Poong just carried him there to get him all dirty. Then, he looks ahead and is surprised to see the 3 bodies on the floor. Soon, Poong approaches the bodies and recognizes one of them as Hyuk Shimsu, and the other 2 as the twin demons. The protagonist then asks Sun what happened there, and she responds that she had nothing to do with it, telling him that Hyuk executed the 2 twins and took his own life after saying something about failing. Yugong, disbelieving the story, questions if that's why she's still alive. This irritates Sun, who starts yelling, saying they were exterminated before she could ask anything, still upset that they left her there alone and disappeared. While Poong picks up a bottle, she continues, questioning him if there was no way to take her along and threatening him, saying that his time would come. But Cheon, ignoring her, pours the liquid from the bottle onto one of the bodies, which immediately disappears. This leaves the girl completely terrified inside, but without showing it, she comments that the corpse dissolved in an instant and says she's a big fan of Lord Poong Cheon. He, cold as always, simply says they better leave soon, which the protagonist confirms, as well as the excited girl. With that, they begin to leave the place, abandoning a piece of paper that disintegrated, with something written on it like, "Ensure Yugong's freedom." But quickly the paper also disappears with the liquid from the bottle. The next morning, traveling in the carriage, Sun comments that you never know what could happen. Inside the carriage, with her neck turned, she says that it's possible to get used to it. Knocking on the wall to get Shion's attention, she loudly says that they've been fleeing nonstop for 4 days, emphasizing that the stench is unbearable, and commenting that if they stop for 5 minutes, she could get a whole bottle of oil out of the young master's hair. The protagonist, listening to all that, remains silent, reflecting that she is usually not an easy person to deal with, but right now, she's impossible, even though it's true that they haven't bathed in a few days. Then, Yu decides to ask Poong to take them to a stream, but he responds by asking them to endure a little longer. This irritates the protagonist, who retorts that it's easy for Cheon to speak, as he's breathing fresh air outside and demands that he guide the carriage to a stream immediately. So, the journey continues, each sitting on one side until suddenly the carriage stops, and the protagonist hears someone asking Cheon to identify himself, which leaves him intrigued. Quickly, he exits and asks what the problem is. Then, a man, a little distant, apologizes. Beside a white-haired girl, he introduces himself as Sang Pil-woong and says he runs a martial arts academy in Xi'an. He explains that one of the wheels of his master's carriage broke and asks if they can help. As soon as he finishes speaking, Poong begins to draw his sword, but Yugong asks that they not harm the innocent and says they will help, reflecting that this man, who runs a third-rate martial arts academy, probably has very little internal chi. Poong then lowers his head, saying he will obey, and suddenly begins to pick up the carriage, leaving the man and his master shocked, and throws it off a cliff along with the horses cruelly. After this, he tells the 2 that the obstacle is out of the way, but if they want the horses' meat, they'll have to go down to get it. The protagonist, observing this bizarre act, thinks that Poong is really mentally disturbed. The man, still shocked, asks Yugong if he can give the young master a ride, to which he confirms, pointing out that Sang could come along too. Then, the girl introduces herself, saying her name is Ju Solbin and thanking him for the kindness. With that, he opens the door and tells her to enter first. The girl, seeing Sun Yakran with her neck turned, almost has a heart attack and starts to feel unwell. But the protagonist gently holds her and says she doesn't need to worry, assuring her that it's not a ghost. Ju then enters the carriage and sits next to Yugang. Seeing the girl, Sun says she's a cutie who must be breaking hearts everywhere, which Ju denies. Then Sun says that since she's escorted, she must be from a noble family, which she also denies. This irritates Sun Yakran, who points out that the girl only knows how to say no and must have a blocked brain, commenting that she's really annoying. The protagonist, observing the two, wonders how to resolve that awful atmosphere. Suddenly, he hears Ju calling him through sound projection. He then observes the girl and wonders if she's a member of the assassination squad sent by the cult. Ju, using sound transmission, asks Yugung to promise he won't make a sound no matter what she says. This makes him even more anxious. And, observing her closely, he wonders what the bastards from the cult are plotting. Then he questions if she and Sang are there to execute him, which confuses her, as that's not their intention. And before she could say anything more, Poong appears, shouting that the girl is dangerous. Quickly, he grabs Ju by the head and the girl immediately grits her teeth. Then, Poong stops applying force and notices that she took her own life. This shocks Sun, and the protagonist, also stunned, asks if she poisoned herself, which Cheon confirms, pointing out that it was much faster than hitting a vital point, and warns that Sang Pil Woong did the same. Yakran, completely disturbed, asks who the hell they are and why everyone around them ends up taking their own life. Cheon, visibly irritated, twists her neck again while she asks why everyone throws themselves into the grave when they see him, but soon she calms down, her neck completely twisted. Poong apologizes for not knocking her out before she caused a scene. Yu responds that it's fine and asks how he found out about Sang. He explains that he asked 2 questions to Sang through sound projection. Cheon had asked what demon cult group he and Ju were from and who was leading the operation, and he noticed that Sang's expression changed instantly upon hearing the question. With that, Sang executed himself before Poong could do anything. This makes the protagonist reflect that his bodyguard just baited the trap and got an answer, and although it's strange, Poong isn't stupid at all. Cheon then bows and says that if they tracked him without him noticing, something is wrong. He then looks seriously and says he thinks someone marked Yugong with the smell of 1,000 miles, which confuses him. Poong then explains that the smell of 1,000 miles is a scent only those who have mastered the divine art of tracking can sense, and the traces of that smell disappear as soon as someone is marked, so the marked person won't notice, making it an incomparable tracking method. After hearing the explanation, Yu says that makes sense and asks if there's any way to remove it. Poong responds that they can burn the fragrance with the heat of the sun, but he'll have to endure some pain, and the protagonist says it's fine as he can withstand a little pain. With that, Xion tells him to sit and cross his legs, which he does promptly. Then he warns that he'll begin, and immediately the protagonist starts to feel the pain. Quickly the pain spreads, making him agonize. Feeling an absurdly intense pain outside the carriage, strong lights can be seen emanating from the procedure. After some time, the procedure is completed, with smoke rising from Yu's head. Still suffering from the heat, he reflects that he will never do that again and thanks God it was really fast. Until Poong places his hand on his head again and, without hesitation, starts emitting heat once more, making Yugong scream in anger as he thought it was over. But the protector tries to cheer him up, saying he only has to endure another 15 minutes. Hearing this, the protagonist goes crazy with rage and thinks that bastard must be enjoying this. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ju and Sang are found on a stone with the writing, "Appear in front of me and your grave will be dug." The bizarre boy, seeing that, wonders how they got rid of the 1,000 miles smell and gets furious for still being ridiculed. With that, he reflects that the orders from the cult leader were wrong, as he should have just executed the young leader. But instead, he has to follow the cult leader's will to secure Yugong's freedom. In a fit of rage, he destroys the stone, asking since when has the demon cult been so merciful. However, he thinks that since the order was given, there's nothing he can do about it. He then calls for Hyolpio, who promptly responds and starts dripping a liquid on his arm, saying that he marked himself with the smell of 1,000 miles and will now begin to track the young leader of the cult. Then, Hyolpio must go to the Shanxi branch to report the situation and also request reinforcements. And when he's done, he must return to the cult, which surprises Hyolpio. He tries to question his master, but only hears that he doesn't want any counter-arguments. Then the master says that when the time comes, he, the Son of Light, will go to hell with Poong Cheon and guarantees that he will pass through Poong and deliver the cult leader's orders to Yugong. Meanwhile, the journey continues, and the protagonist, inside the carriage, smiles, reflecting that everything was burned. And because of Poong's bastard antics, He didn't even get to hear what she was saying, which makes him question what Ju was trying to say. Out of nowhere, Sun asks him why he looks so thoughtful. She starts laughing, asking if it's because he was scared by the attempted execution he went through, asking him to tell her everything and questioning if she needs to change his diaper. This deeply irritates Yugong, and he starts shouting, asking if she thinks about no one but herself and if her brain is just for decoration. But this doesn't intimidate her, and still smiling, she comments that he's gotten so irritated. Then, out of nowhere, she changes her expression and asks if Yugong wants her to beg miserably for her life, questioning if he wants to play the hero and comfort her while she cries in his arms. Hearing this, the protagonist is completely confused and says that's not what he was trying to say, but the girl, irritated, just turns away. With that, Yu notices that she is trembling and thinks that maybe she said that just to vent. Looking closely at Sun, he apologizes using sound projection. This makes the girl ask why he's using sound projection to apologize, and he responds that it's so only she can hear it, as he can't apologize in a way that anyone else can hear. Sun then says she imagines that wouldn't look good and asks again why he's so deep in thought and concentrated. The protagonist responds that he was thinking about a friend who has a very powerful family, but whose uncle started a rebellion. He explains that his friend managed to escape with the help of a subordinate he trusts, but his uncle is sending a bunch of elite soldiers to execute him. Yu says that normally he'd be eliminated as a risk factor, but he himself feels like they're trying to say something to his friend. After hearing the whole story, Sun thinks for a moment and then starts saying that, based on her brilliant judgment, it seems like the message is that they won't harm him if he lives his life hidden, as if he doesn't exist. This leaves the protagonist thoughtful, wondering if that really is the case. He recalls that it's almost impossible for the demon cult's elite soldiers to miss their target, and also remembers Ju and how he couldn't hear what she was trying to say, concluding that Zhao meant she didn't intend to eliminate him. Suddenly, Pung opens the carriage door, warning that it's good to make a stop, and Yugong, with a card up his sleeve, reflects that now that he knows what they want, he doesn't need to be afraid anymore. So he says it's fine. However, he apologizes to Pung and says that, for the sake of the freedom he desires, he's leaving. Sometime later, in another place, a man serves a plate of food on the table, and Sun, with water in her mouth, says that it's been a long time since she ate something good and that apparently Pung has finally learned. Quickly, she looks at the other tables and asks if they didn't give more potions to them. Slightly, the protagonist notices something and says to wait a minute. Looking to the side, he asks where those warriors are from. The waiter then explains that they are from the Cloud Tiger clan and that they are renowned warriors, famous for their martial arts. With a smile, the waiter says they can relax, and as long as they don't start a fight with the warriors, they won't have any problems. The protagonist says he understands, but thinks to himself that the Cloud Tiger clan is good at martial arts, and that's enough for him. Looking covertly at Pung, he thinks that those warriors could keep him busy, and after causing serious damage to Pung with his spiritual power, then he plans to run away, shouting that Puong-chan said the Cloud Tiger clan only has weaklings, making the clan members foam with rage and rush at Pung, who will serve as a distraction while the protagonist escapes. Back in reality, the protagonist reflects that, even though spiritual power can break stones, Pung is strong and will recover quickly. While the bodyguard eats, he draws his dagger, mentally asking Pung not to take it the wrong way and quickly attacks him. But unexpectedly, both Yu and Sun are stunned to see that the strike only tore Pung's clothes and didn't pierce him. Then he stands up with a sinister look and asks what Yugong is trying to do. The protagonist, almost shitting himself in fear, is speechless and wonders what the hell Pung's body is made of. Then, unexpectedly, Pung sits down and asks if Yu poked him to ask for something, leaving both of them stunned again. Not believing what they saw, the protagonist wonders how someone could ask for something by poking someone with a dagger, and Sun questions since when that was just a simple poke, commenting that Yugong must have some psychiatric issues. But the protagonist ignores the girl and says that he really would like to ask for something because he's very irritated. With a bizarre smile, he points to the Cloud Tiger clan and says that those bastards dare to carry swords in his presence, and he can't accept that, so they need to be taught a lesson. Promptly, the clan members start drawing their weapons and ask what he's talking about, and that's enough to irritate Pung, who, also drawing his sword, says that since his master called him using spiritual power, it means he's very angry. The protagonist takes advantage of the situation but asks Pung to leave everyone alive so they can learn the lesson, and if any of them don't repent, Pung will have problems with him, which makes the big guy put his sword away and decide to use his fists. It doesn't take long for the clan members to charge and attack, shouting that they will make them wake up through a beating. With that, Xion also advances and quickly grabs one of them by the head, slamming it into the ground. He then goes after another, leaving one of the members shocked to see his comrade's head smashed. While the fighting intensifies, the protagonist begins to sneak away, taking advantage of the moment. Without hesitation, he runs out of the restaurant and thanks the Cloud Tiger clan for their sacrifice. Moving quickly, he reflects that even if his chi runs out, he needs to go as far as he can while they keep Pung busy. After some time, he comes across a gate which he believes to be the outer gate and with a smile, thinks he will finally be able to live freely. Until, out of nowhere, Cheon appears behind him, happily saying that his master is using the body lightness technique perfectly. The protagonist steps on the wall and Cheon grabs him by the clothes, making him turn with a serious look and ask how he got there so quickly, questioning if Pung didn't follow the command to leave all the warriors alive. But the big guy doesn't respond and just says they will return, pointing out that something awaits him. They go back and see all the clan members on their knees, wishing long life to the Lord of Lords and begging for punishment for the insolence they committed. The protagonist can't believe what he's seeing, while Pung, proudly, points out that they are all begging Yugang to forgive them for their transgression. This makes the protagonist tremble with anger because he trusted that clan to buy him time to escape, and instead, they are all begging for forgiveness and punishment. Meanwhile, one of the members with a broken face reflects that humiliating himself for that kid is frustrating and decides to attack him when he lowers his guard. But before he can finish his thought, Poon grabs him and without hesitation slams his face into the ground, saying they don't deserve forgiveness. Smiling, he tells Yugang to show them what he's capable of. On the other hand, the protagonist, completely frustrated, thinks that he wants to exterminate everyone around him. Sometime later, on a calm afternoon, Yugang, inside the carriage, continues frustrated and unable to believe what happened. He reflects that even the elite of the demon cult and his spiritual power were useless against Poon, making him wonder if he really is incapable of escaping Pung Qian's clutches. Suddenly, Sun calls him through sound transmission and asks if he really intended to eliminate Pung Qian. The protagonist responds that he didn't aim for a vital point, but it doesn't matter, as the blade didn't even scratch that guy. This makes Sun question if it's because his blade is trash. Then, the protagonist picks it up, aims, and throws it, destroying a part of the carriage's interior, leaving the girl surprised. This makes her question if Puong is a monster made of steel, and that, to have someone so strong as a subordinate, you must be a big deal. The protagonist then asks where she's going with that, and with a smile, she asks if he really wants to escape from the big guy, and if he'd like some help. Suspicious, the protagonist asks what she could do to help. Sun responds that she has a little toy, and with a smug smile shows a sphere, asking if Yugang wants to play with the big guy. And he, observing, says it looks suspicious and asks what it is. The girl starts smiling and informs him that it's a pill that turns the insides upside down, warning that 15 minutes after being consumed, the intestines will start working more than Elon Musk's lawyer. Frightened by the idea, the protagonist asks if she wants him to eat that, and smiling, she says it would be a wonderful sight, but the pill is for her. Asking him to pay attention, she explains that the plan will be as follows. Yugang should call Poong and tell him that the girl needs to relieve herself in the woods, but he must stay alert in case she tries to escape. After that, she will go as far as she can while he disappears. Then, when Poong goes looking for him after returning, she will also take the chance to slip away. Still smiling, she says that she can keep Poong Cheon occupied for an hour and that she will consume the pill in his place because she's a great friend. This makes the protagonist consider the idea and say that he would be grateful for that while also feeling sorry for her behind. Seeing that the protagonist likes the idea, Sun says they should start the plan quickly, which he confirms, thanking the girl. But with the pill in hand, she says there's no free lunch in the business world and that he will owe her a drink another day. Then she quickly consumes the pill and moments later starts screaming, saying that nature is calling and that he needs to stop the carriage. Poong hears the call and slightly stops the carriage, which the two quickly notice and start celebrating. However, to their surprise, the carriage starts moving again, and the subordinate commanding the horses asks if she really thinks he'll fall for that trap, leaving the two inside the carriage speechless. The protagonist then starts shouting, saying that the situation isn't good and telling Poong to stop the carriage immediately. But Cheon, calmly, just says that his master can't fall for such cheap tricks, which irritates him, and he shouts that Poong doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation because she really needs to stop. He orders again for the big guy to stop the carriage. He starts pounding desperately on the wall while the girl agonizes on the floor, and seeing her suffering expression, the protagonist gets even more scared and begins to mentally lament. Sun, realizing that the plan went wrong, starts screaming in desperation, telling the protagonist and Poong to go to hell. As expected, the pill quickly starts taking effect, causing the girl to nearly blow up the carriage with a stinky bomb, making Yugang scream because of the smell. Hearing the scream, Poong instantly becomes alert and goes to see what's happening. Sensing the stench that filled the environment, he grabs the protagonist and runs out of there, apologizing to Yu. After some time, Poong stops and apologizes again, stressing that he didn't expect Sun Yakran to soil herself. But the protagonist, with his back to him, says that he didn't obey a direct order, and for that he will be punished. To which Cheon argues that it was a necessary step for you to become a supreme master. Hearing this, the protagonist becomes furious and asks if, by any chance, to become a supreme master, one has to smell someone else's shit. As expected, Poong prepares himself and starts banging his head against a tree, apologizing to his master. From a distance, his screams can be heard, saying that because of him, the situation stinks, and now they need a cleaning crew. A few hours later, they had to change carriages, and inside it, Sun is visibly shaken. The protagonist avoids looking at her and thinks to himself that the girl must be dead inside, as she has the expression of someone who has put a lung out. But to his surprise, Sun says through sound transmission that they should try again, and before he could say anything, she takes another coconut pill, leaving the protagonist shocked. He asks why she's doing all this for him, but the girl simply tells him to shut up and says that the Sun family never surrenders. Quickly, Poong hears the screams and opens the door. Slightly, the protagonist thinks that he can't let this sacrifice go to waste, so he orders his subordinate to take Sun Yakran to a secluded place. But to both of their dismay, Cheon draws his sword and with that terrifying look, says that this can't continue and that he needs to exterminate Sun. The two are left speechless by those words, and Yu argues that it's not the girl's fault if she has a rotten gut and that he just needs to take her to relieve herself. Then Poong lowers his sword and the protagonist reflects that this is the perfect moment. He then asks if the subordinate is going to disobey another order. With that, Cheon starts to sheath his sword and apologizes, saying that he will do as ordered. Quickly, he grabs the girl and starts moving away, while the protagonist says that this is going to stink a lot, so he should take her to another planet if possible and keep an eye on her so she doesn't escape, to which he simply replies, "I hear and obey." Now, completely alone, Yu doesn't hesitate and begins moving quickly in the opposite direction, reflecting that he will never forget Sun Yakran's sacrifice. He moves faster than ever through the forest, thinking that if he uses the body lightness technique, Poong will catch up to him easily. Then he suddenly stops and, looking around, finds some leaves on the ground and begins picking them up, thinking that this must be a good place to hide. Sometime later, Poong arrives at the spot where the protagonist is hiding and notices that his tracks stop there. He pauses for a moment and wonders where Yugong could have gone. He reflects that it's impossible for him to have given up his position as the young leader of the cult and just left, so someone must have kidnapped him while he was practicing body lightness. Quickly he moves, saying that whoever did this won't be forgiven. Meanwhile, the protagonist, still hiding, notices that Poong has left, but knows he needs to remain calm and stay there. Then he begins counting, and after some time, as dusk falls, he finishes his count at 20,000 seconds and begins to leave the hiding spot. Yu, unaware of his subordinate staring at him, feels relieved and thinks that the big guy must have already left. But as soon as he notices his bodyguard, he almost has another heart attack. Seeing Cheon's expression, he starts sweating cold and tries to explain himself, but soon the subordinate states that his master has already learned the stealth arts. The protagonist, trying to disguise his discomfort, confirms, emphasizing that one never knows when they'll need them in Jianghu, and also takes the opportunity to comment that apparently Poong has mastered the tracking arts. With this, he begins to distance himself, saying that there is still much ground ahead. Surprisingly, Poong remains still and calls out to him. Hearing the call, Yugong looks back nervously and sees Poong saying that he will need to bow. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, and the big guy explains that the celestial demon Asura sent him to lead him to the supreme path, and attempts to avoid this fate are unacceptable, making this the third attempt. This leaves the protagonist in shock, realizing that his subordinate has noticed all the times and just made him look like an idiot. He then asks if Poong is accusing him, but Cheon responds that the supreme martial leader cannot lose confidence, so Yugong must bow his head confidently. This leaves the protagonist confused, asking what kind of logic that is, since he is the master. Ignoring that, Poong asks again for him to bow, and the protagonist, furious at this, promptly bows, saying that he was planning to do that anyway. Cheon then asks him to repeat the words, "I am the leader of the demon cult and nothing in this world scares me." Without hesitation, the protagonist starts to say what was ordered, but Poong says that he's speaking too softly and must start over, saying it loudly, making him curse Poong before repeating the words. Again, Cheon scolds him, saying he shouldn't curse during the words and must start again. Then, the protagonist, irritated and confident, says loudly, "Nothing in this world scares me because I am invincible." Poong asks him to repeat again, which makes him even angrier. Then, even louder, he yells those words, which echo throughout the forest. After some time, as dusk falls, the journey continues, and the protagonist inside the carriage thinks that this situation is a mess and that he has to deal with problem after problem because of Poong Cheon. Additionally, there's still Sun, calling Poong a bastard because He pressed her pressure points, leaving her paralyzed, and because of him, she has been. Looking at the girl, the protagonist admits that she has suffered a lot as well. Suddenly, Yugang hears Pung saying that there is a carriage with a broken wheel blocking the way. He then gets out and sees the broken wheel. After that, a man introduces himself saying he's Qian Wuzhang, a designated guard, and asks if he can request assistance, even though it may seem rude. Hearing all of this, the protagonist reflects that the cult members really lack creativity since they're using the broken carriage story again, so he asks Pung to do what he did the last time this happened. As ordered, he complies. Then, Wu Zhang asks them to give a ride to the master, and the protagonist, irritated, responds that she can get in, but he must stay by Pung's side. It doesn't take long for this to happen, and the journey resumes. The master introduces herself as Wang Yok and says that she will be under Yugong's care on this journey. The protagonist quickly thinks that the girl is well-mannered and, using sound transmission, tells Wang to stay quiet if she wants to live, pointing out that she shouldn't throw her life away with things like that. Wang then responds that if she were afraid of losing her life, she wouldn't be here. Yugong calls her foolish and asks why she thinks Pung let her in. He explains that it was to light the flame of hope and she thinks it might work, only for him to snuff that flame out once again. The girl simply responds that it doesn't matter, but the protagonist insists, saying that she doesn't have to do what she's planning and that if she's here at Somyun Magan's request, he already knows her intentions. But the girl interrupts him, saying that she loves Yugong and doesn't care about the risk. This leaves the protagonist completely confused, imagining Somyun making a heart for him. He thinks that this can't be, and asks what kind of foolish love this is, questioning if it was Somyun who sent her to say that. Immediately, the girl is shocked by the question and retorts, asking how he dares call her love foolish. This leaves Yugong even more confused, and he asks who she really is. But Wang simply slaps him across the face, questioning how he can disregard the love she feels. The protagonist almost can't bear the force of the slap and still doesn't understand anything, while Sun laughs at the situation, saying that it was well done. Suddenly, the horses stop abruptly and Pung, holding Wuzhang by the neck, asks Yugong what is going on. Startled by all of this, he thinks it was just a misunderstanding, so he asks Pung to let it go, assuring him that everything is fine. But noticing that the protagonist's face is bruised from the slap, Cheon becomes furious and says that Yugong has already granted them a generous gift, questioning how she dares lay hands on that noble body. He then begins to approach Wang, who starts to become scared, and with a sinister look, Pung Cheon says that taking her life wouldn't be sufficient compensation, which terrifies the girl completely. Without hesitation, she attacks quickly but strikes Wu Zhang, who was used as a human shield by the bodyguard. This infuriates Wang Yok even more, and after calling Pung a filthy bastard, she charges with everything she has. But halfway through, she notices that Pung doesn't seem intimidated. He then lifts the carriage, causing the girl to lose her balance, and this startles her because she didn't expect that. At the very moment she planted her foot, he would lift the carriage so instinctively. After that brief moment, Pung drives her head into the ground, making her scream in desperation. He then starts to draw his sword, and the protagonist, watching the scene, realizes that Cheon is actually going to kill the girl. He then yells for him to stop immediately, which Pung does at the last moment before he can decapitate Wang Yok. Yu then asks Pung to spare her, saying it was just a misunderstanding, and that he himself provoked the girl, so Pung should sheath his sword. The subordinate doesn't like hearing that, but nonetheless puts his sword back in its sheath and gestures a salute, saying he only hears and obeys. Relieved by the situation, the protagonist says he can return to the carriage, while Wang continues trying to recover. Pung then obeys and moves toward the front of the carriage, but suddenly stops, leaving the protagonist intrigued and asking if something happened. But Cheon simply grabs the girl by the neck, leaving the protagonist terrified, screaming that he shouldn't do that, and again, only the screams are heard. The big guy twisted Wang's neck, leaving her completely shocked. Seeing this, Sun says there's no point in the girl staying in shock and highlights that Pung's specialty is twisting necks, which only makes Wang more irritated. She asks who the hell they are. Sun replies that he doesn't know either, but he knows how to get her neck back to normal. Then, with a demonic expression, she offers 2 divine laxative pills, saying that just taking them will have an instant effect. However, the protagonist quickly grabs the pills from Sun's hand, asking if she wants to make the carriage unusable again. The girl, not understanding anything, just keeps crying, shouting that her neck hurts. This irritates Pung, who also shouts, telling her to shut up and saying that if he hears her cry again. Hearing this, the girl immediately goes silent. Sun says she can relax because Pung will fix her if she behaves. She also mentions that she's been through a lot and must be having a hard time, which calms the girl down. Sun Yakran then approaches, calling her little sister with all his fakeness, and asks where she was heading. Wang replies that she was going to Mount Otai, and Sun says it's quite the coincidence, as they're also going there. Observing the scene, the protagonist thinks it's impossible to understand women and says he'll inform Cheon that Wang will accompany them. Wang Yok says it's good to have Sun nearby and comments that she's never gone through things like this in her 24 years of life. Hearing this, Sun immediately changes his expression, shouting that Wang should sit far away from him, calling her older sister, and informs her that he's only 21. This leaves Wang shocked again. Pung, hearing all the shouting, also shouts, saying he already told them to shut up and asking Yugong to finish them off. But the protagonist just remains silent, deep in thought, while the two girls argue for space on the other bench, making him more and more impatient. After some time, the carriage stops, and Pung says that from there, they'll have to go on foot. Yu asks if that's Mount Otai, and Pung confirms. Wang just says she leaves her life in the protagonist's hands. Suddenly, Sun asks if she will really continue on to another place from there, commenting that it's good to know so they can say goodbye. But Wang simply replies that she doesn't need to know. This enrages Sun, who retorts that those who keep too many secrets are prostitutes. The protagonist, tired of the argument, asks Pung to fix Wang's neck quickly. Cheon then prepares to fix her while the girl thinks she can finally escape these crazy people. But before he makes a move, several armed men start approaching. They surround Pung, and one of them, licking his sword, asks what they are doing in the mountain, especially being men and beautiful young women like them. Wang's eyes widen upon hearing that, while Pung turns with a threatening look. Upon noticing Cheon's expression, the man thinks he's in trouble. One of them comments that the girl's quite strange, and another responds that there's another girl there too, putting Sun on alert. She then asks who these guys are, while the protagonist reflects that they are in the verdant forest, so she should know who they are, meaning these men don't belong there. With that, Yu tells Pung to take care of them immediately, and Pung, bowing, answers that he only listens and obeys. Seeing this, the men start mocking Pung Cheon, saying that everyone today is acting too formally, and commenting that Yu must think he's the leader of a demon cult. The protagonist, irritated by their mockery, asks if Cheon is waiting for a written order. But suddenly they notice something and soon see someone emerging from the bushes, telling them to stay still. Then, a group appears, and the leader asks the Black Dragon Union if their objective wasn't to capture the bandits of the verdant forest, emphasizing that they shouldn't harm innocent people. The leader of the Black Dragon replies that yes, the goal was the bandits, but they decided to work overtime. Hearing this conversation, the protagonist remembers that the Black Dragon Union is one of the 5 largest martial unions, and notices that the men in white also seem to be strong. Observing the two groups threatening and surrounding each other, he wonders why all this chaos is happening with them in the middle of it. Suddenly, the two groups charge at each other and begin to fight fiercely. Then, Pung says that it would be a good idea to watch and train a bit, as it seems there's a problem in the verdant forest, which Yugong confirms, pointing out that a mess like this wouldn't happen at Mount Wutai. But Sun gets excited about the fight and starts cheering for the beating, while Wang, approaching Cheon, asks when he will restore her neck. This makes him furious, and he shouts, asking if she didn't realize he's talking to the master. Immediately, she starts to back off, apologizing, and as she reaches a safe distance, she insults Pung. But still, he hears and tells her to repeat what she said, and she, afraid, responds that she didn't say anything. However, Cheon insists, saying that he heard her curse, which she firmly denies, swearing to God. And while they argue, Sun tells them to shut up because she wants to watch the fight. Hearing this, Wang argues that Sun Yakran curses much more, asking why Pung doesn't twist her neck too. The bodyguard then moves closer to Wang's face and says it's because that woman has already paid a very high price, and getting closer says that she's been in the shit twice. And the first time, the shit stank a lot. Hearing that talk, Sun tells Pung not to expose what happened to her butt in front of good-looking people, which leaves one of the white warriors confused. The protagonist then intervenes in the argument and tells Cheon to stop, but Pung insists, telling Wang to admit that she cursed him, while Sun remains irritated, saying they're disturbing the other people's fight. Wang Yok then starts shouting, saying that she really did curse Pung and asks if he's relieved now that he heard it loud and clear. He unexpectedly smiles, saying that he knew he was right, and so they stay. Wang crying, Pung laughing, and Sun Yakran cheering for the fight, telling one of the men to tear off another guy's ear and balls and make him swallow them. With all of this, the protagonist looks up and wonders if he really deserves this, until suddenly, Sun notices something on the ground and picks up a whistle, wondering if someone dropped it there by accident. Then, without thinking twice, she blows the whistle, hoping that everyone explodes. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, a man, also with a whistle, hears the sound that Yakran made when blowing it. Then, he starts moving quickly and reaches a place, opening the door and saying that they've finished the sweep, except for the penniless bandits of the verdant forest. The man who hears this is the leader of the Black Dragon Union, holding a sword in his hand, surrounded by bodies on the ground. He then looks seriously at the whistle man, and orders him to call the men as they'll finish off the bandits of the forest soon. Back at the mountain, hearing the whistle that Yakrin blew, the warriors immediately stop startled, and one of the Black Dragon warriors asks what the hell she's doing. Another one says that since the whistle was blown, they have to finish it as quickly as possible. Observing the scene, the protagonist wonders if there are more members of the Black Dragon Union, and thinks that he needs to leave soon before the situation gets worse. But around him, Poong continues laughing, Wang is crying, and Sun is excited about the fight. He then starts shouting, telling Chan to stop immediately and let Wang Yuok go. With that, he immediately fixes the young woman's neck. Finally free, she mentally insults Poong with the worst names possible and hopes she never sees him again. But fearing the danger, she simply thanks the big guy. And he, with his usual look, says that she shouldn't thank him, and without hesitation, restricts the girl's pressure points, leaving her in shock. The protagonist gets angry with this and asks what the hell Poong is doing, while Wang is on all fours on the ground and Sun bursts out laughing watching the weird scene. But Cheon asserts that the girl offended him, and since he is Yugong's subordinate, it's the same as insulting his master directly. However, Yu remains nervous and tells him to stop acting crazy, thinking that, despite Poong calling him master, he never obeys him. As the fight continues, the subordinate says they need to cross the mountain quickly because if they wait until the fight ends, it will be night. With that, the protagonist comments that sometimes he feels like he's talking to a wall and tells them to leave already, and Cheon bows, saying that his master's kindness is immeasurable. Then they begin to leave and Sun bids farewell, saying, "Goodbye, bunch of idiots," leaving both the white and black warriors shocked, wondering who the hell those people were. Sometime later, still walking, the protagonist sees some buildings ahead and reflects that, in the end, they stopped right in front of the bandits' den until suddenly, he notices something and, using sound transmission, asks Poong what happened. He replies that he's trying to count the number of enemies. Using his skills, he can see several bandits scattered across the forest, and among them, the leader of the Black Dragon Union. After calculating, he informs that there are about 500 people, and the protagonist, worried, says that in that case, there's nothing to be done because it will be impossible to reach their den. Poong then says that he can destroy the entire Black Dragon Union, but if they go together, he fears that Yugong might get hurt. Yu feels frustrated with the situation and says that in that case, they can wait here, and before he could suggest they find a good hiding spot, he notices Poong starting to dig a hole. He then asks why he's digging a hole out of nowhere, and Cheon, proudly, asks if his master wasn't trying to hide in a bush to train the stealth arts. So this would be the perfect time to use that impressive stealth technique again. Terrified by the idea, the protagonist asks if the technique involves burying himself in that bizarre hole, and Sun, as provocative as ever, asks if he stopped to pray, calling him a fool of a master and questioning if he's asking God to give him a brain. Then she tells them to move aside. Poong, noticing something wrong, sees the girl running, saying that she's too young and attractive to be buried there. But Cheon, faster than the wind, grabs the girl by the neck before she could blink and throws her into the hole with incredible force, leaving even the protagonist shocked. He looks back and sees only dust rising from the force with which Cheon threw the girl. He then looks forward and sees Poong saying that everything is ready. Before he could say anything, he receives a light push that makes him fall into the hole suddenly. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man wearing a wolf's head hears something and wonders what that noise was. This is Kwang Sa from the Verdant Forest Scouts. Moments later, a man arrives asking how things are going, and Kwang informs him that the members of the Black Dragon Union are still waiting for the 7 ghosts of Sushan. Hearing this, Cheon-ung, also from the scout team, warns that they plan to attack as soon as the reinforcements arrive. Kwang then looks down and sees 3 people, informing that, apparently, the reinforcements have already arrived. Ung, looking, asks if one of them is one of the 7 ghosts of Wushan, and points out that even from a distance, you can feel that his martial arts are impressive. Meanwhile, down below, the ghost stares at Poong and, astonished, asks who he is, but Cheon just watches him and stays silent. Then, the ghost says it doesn't matter, because they shouldn't waste time listening to someone about to meet hell, and orders his men to exterminate Poong. Quickly, the men begin advancing, all armed, and the ghost, convinced that his men would quickly deal with it, only hears the sound of Poong's sword massacring his subordinates, which leaves him stunned. Immediately, he turns around and sees his men completely annihilated, while Poong remains untouched. It doesn't take long before more warriors advance to attack the big guy, who, with little effort, grabs one of them by the arm and rips it off in the blink of an eye, throwing blood into the eyes of another approaching. This makes the man furious, and, wiping his face, he says that he won't be intimidated by that cheap trick. Again, without any effort, Poong sends him to hell with a single sword strike. Seeing this, the ghost also charges in indignantly, moving his sword quickly to attack while Cheon, focused, prepares to throw the arm of one of the men he just tore off. Quickly, he launches the arm at the ghost, hitting him squarely in the chest and sending him flying. Observing the scene, one of the men asks how he defeated the leader of the Union so easily and orders everyone to charge at him. While Pung, preparing again, attacks with his sword in a brutal movement, causing a thunderous crash, Kwangsa watches everything and says that it's impossible for the entire Black Dragon Union to have been completely obliterated with just one attack. Seeing all the destruction caused, he points out that not even the 7 ghosts of Wushan would be capable of such strength, which makes him wonder who is the one that executed such a massacre. Quickly, he starts running, telling his companion to wake up and inform the headquarters urgently. As the two run through the trees, the demon boy watches everything attentively and reflects that taking the head of the Black Dragon King won't be hard. However, annihilating so many people and exterminating the leader of the Black Dragons in 10 seconds is extremely absurd. Still, this is expected from the servant of the heavenly demon lord Asura, who conquered Jianghu, which makes him question whether he himself could deal with Pung, even if it meant sacrificing himself in the process. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the verdant forest, Kwangsa and Qian kneel and inform that the Black Dragon Union will be destroyed soon, which makes the leader laugh, saying that it's well-deserved, highlighting that this is an excellent change and that anyone who opposes the Black Dragon Union is their friend. He orders that they be polite and give that person the finest of welcomes, respecting the etiquette. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the protagonist stares at Xian with a frustrated expression, while he simply lowers his head and bowing, says that he has dealt with the Black Dragon Union and apologizes for not being able to provide a comfortable hiding place during the process. This enrages Yu, who, shouting, asks if he is really apologizing after burying him in a hole, but the big guy simply says that he can guarantee his master will be able to clean himself properly. Yu responds that he's a worm and that if he does that again, it will stink on his side. Suddenly, Sun also appears, irritated and calling Pung a bastard, and without hesitation tries to punch him, but he quickly dodges, causing the girl to fall face first onto the ground and knock herself out for a while. Meanwhile, Pung notices someone approaching. It doesn't take long for the two from the wolf's den to arrive, and greeting formally, they salute them, saying they are scouts from the verdant forest and are here on the order of the forest's leader. They quickly notice Sun Yakran completely unconscious on the ground and wonder what the hell a corpse is doing there. But smiling, Kwang simply asks if, by any chance, he is the brave hero who annihilated the Black Dragon Union, which catches the protagonist's attention. But suddenly, Pung, with blood in his eyes, warns Yugong that he needs to rip out the eyes of those two, which makes the protagonist ask if he's going to do that again. He explains that a supreme being must always be perfect and cannot allow those two to see him all dirty. These words deeply irritate Yu, who starts shouting, saying he's dirty like this because of Qian, and he also asks if those men he annihilated were really from the Black Dragon Union, emphasizing that he warned him not to go around exterminating people like that. Frustrated, Pung responds that those men resisted, forcing him to take that action. He explains that the only thing that would have stopped them was the cemetery, and it was a difficult choice, since they didn't value their own lives, so he had no other option but to respect the last wish of brave warriors. After hearing the explanation, the protagonist says he didn't know the Black Dragon Union was so noble and that if he really had no choice, he made the right decision. While the two scout members stand amazed, wondering if Yugong really believed that story and reflecting on the girl on the ground, apparently lifeless, it doesn't take long for Pung to call the two and ask them to take him to the leader of the bandits, ordering them to do so with their heads down. The two are terrified upon noticing Qian's look and quickly say it's fine, thinking they're doomed. It doesn't take long for them to arrive at the headquarters, where the bearded man gets excited upon seeing them and asks if this is the great warrior who annihilated the Union. Coming down the stairs, he asks if there's anything he needs, as he'll do his best to meet his expectations, and Pung simply asks him to kneel, which makes the bearded man smile and reply that he must not have heard correctly. Then Pung Chan shouts loudly, telling him to kneel and lower his head, asking if he knows who is behind him. Immediately, the bearded man gets angry and comments that this is insolence before the verdant forest, pointing out that apparently this man is tired of living. Qian, still carrying Sun Yakran in his arms, suddenly lets her go, making the girl fall face first on the ground, but she quickly gets up, complaining of a headache. The bearded man, upon seeing the girl, is completely stunned, while Sun, with a smile, greets him, saying, "Hi, Daddy." Immediately, the two stupid scouts are also shocked, calling her Lady Yakran, while the protagonist, also incredulous, wonders if Sun Yakran is really the daughter of the leader of the bandits. Extremely angry with the situation, Sun's father begins shouting, calling Pung and Yugong bastards, and stating that even though they've taken his precious and beloved daughter as a hostage, he won't kneel, emphasizing that he is the king of the verdant forest. Suddenly, Wang appears emotional and starts crying, saying that she has finally arrived and calling the old man her love. The bearded man, furious, simply ignores her and orders everyone to kneel. After some time, all the bandits are kneeling, and the leader, indignant, reflects on that humiliation, as he can't believe the entire headquarters of the verdant forest was taken by just 2 men, especially one of them being just a brat. Meanwhile, the protagonist wonders if the Bandit King really has no chance against them. It doesn't take long before the bearded man asks Sun who those people are, and she responds that she doesn't really know. But the big guy is named Poong Cheon, pointing out that he only has crap in his head and no self-control as he annihilates anyone who disobeys him, like he did with the Black Dragon Union. Sun also explains that the other one is named Yugong and is another weirdo, telling them that Poong even made everyone kneel because of him, and apparently he's hiding something she's still not sure about. Irritated, she says that Yugong plays innocent, but because of him she's been embarrassed several times, which makes her father question why. The girl simply ignores the question and asks why her father called Wang my love, making him embarrassed and start explaining that as she knows, her mother has been dead for a long time. This only irritates Sun further, who starts shouting, asking if he plans to marry that bitch, to which he responds that he finally found love after all these years. Suddenly, Poong asks them to stop the argument. Meanwhile, the protagonist reflects that he can't believe he escaped the demon cult only to hear bandits arguing. Soon, Cheon calls him and asks him to sit on the Bandit King's throne, making Yu wonder why the hell he would sit there. The big guy, noticing the protagonist's expression, smashes the throne with a single strike, saying he understands. Watching this, the protagonist is shocked, wondering what the hell Poong meant by understands. He then explains that the chair wasn't worthy of Yugong, and apologizing for it, he shatters the throne and throws it up, making the bandits draw their weapons and charge, questioning how he dares do that to the Grandmaster's throne. The Bandit King, also enraged, orders everyone to attack together quickly. With that, they quickly close in on Poong Cheon, surrounding him, and one of them attacks him with a sword aimed at the waist, but it causes no damage, leaving the bandit completely stunned, wondering if he really landed the blow. Cheon then, with a dark look, glares at the bandit, making him even more terrified. Sweating, he tries to say that he tripped. Poong says he didn't understand what he said, and asks him to repeat the last thing he said. This leaves the bandit completely petrified with fear, but quickly he gathers courage and says that offering a throne unworthy of his master is unforgivable. Then Poong asks the other bandits if they agree with that, and without hesitation the two nod. Cheon then turns, saying it's fine. He grabs a piece of the broken throne and says that if the next throne they bring doesn't please his master, he will crush the stone with his own hands, and adds that they'll meet the same fate as that piece of the throne. After this, the bandits start running desperately to get another throne, and Sun, with a smile on her face, asks her father if he now understands what she was trying to say, pointing out that Poong has no sense of propriety and that if they want to survive, they'll need to obey. It doesn't take long for the bandits to present a new throne to Yugong. Then Poong asks his master to sit, but he remains standing with a blank expression, which makes the big guy question if the throne doesn't please him. This makes the bandits anxious and afraid that Yugong won't approve, and one of them wonders if this will be the end of all of them. Poong then says again that apparently that throne is not worthy of his master, leaving the bandit already shitting his pants, more terrified, wishing Yugong would just sit in that damn throne. Then, to everyone's surprise, the protagonist sits on the throne, leaving everyone, including Lord Yakran, relieved. Irritated, he thinks that Yugong only took this long to create all that suspense. Finally on the throne, the protagonist sighs and Poong bows, thanking his master. He then starts to speak, telling the bandits to pay attention to what he will say because the master has given an order. Cheon orders the bandits to bury all the bodies of the Black Dragon Union without leaving traces, making it seem like the Union was never there. And after that, the verdant forest should operate normally, but they must stay alert to ensure no one escapes. Finally, Poong orders that they find the best cook for his master, and if one person tries to escape, everyone will be annihilated. After hearing all that, Lord Yakran is incredulous and thinks that Yugong is truly as merciless as his lackey Poong Cheon. After all this, the protagonist calls for Cheon, who immediately responds. The protagonist then takes the throne and uses it to strike Poong's face hard, questioning if that's what he considers good manners when representing his master and calling him an arrogant bastard. Observing the scene, the bearded man is shocked and wonders if this guy really gave an order and then immediately attacked his own servant, concluding that Yugong is truly a complete madman, a real psychopath. Meanwhile, the protagonist, still frustrated, thinks that he hasn't said a single word since they arrived, and suddenly Poong shows up with those arrogant orders. Suddenly, a man arrives running, blowing a whistle, which the two immediately hear. Then Yu asks what that sound is, and in the blink of an eye, several men start arriving, armed and shouting that they are from the Black Dragon Union, demanding that the members of the verdant forest surrender without resistance, calling them worms. But when they look ahead, they encounter a forest army, leaving the commander of the attack confused and wondering why so few of the Union members are present. Without hesitation, the old man charges, commanding his men to do the same, massacring the few Union members who were invading with only their distant screams heard. Sometime later, someone while eating says that they wanted to deal with that one-eyed man personally and is even more curious about those five they faced. Another man, named Murong Wunchon from the Murong clan, highlights that facing them was very peculiar, and the first man, named Peng Anrok from the Peng clan of Hebei, retorts saying that one of them was on all fours, and the prettiest one cursed a lot. Another man, named Jagal Sumyong, comments that there was also a country bumpkin and a young man with a noble air who seemed very out of place, and that since they bumped into danger, they must all be buried by now. Then, another guy, named Namgung Yon from the Namgung clan, says that it's probably true and wonders why the hell they were even fighting. Jaigal, smiling, responds that it's because the young ones have much to dedicate themselves to in improving their skills. While they were talking, someone enters the restaurant. It's the bandits who arrive running, and one of them asks where the cook is. Murong is surprised by the bandits, while Jagal, standing up, asks if the Black Dragon Union wasn't supposed to be surrounding Mount Wutai right now. But the bandit, with an axe in hand, ignores them and yells, saying they'll take the cook for a ride and that anyone who doesn't like it can complain at Mount Wutai, because he only likes to fight at 2 times, night and day. Hearing this, Yon draws his sword and tells the others it's better to go check what's happening. They then go outside and are confused when they notice the bandits are gathering all the cooks, wondering what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, at Mount Wutai, at the Verdant Forest headquarters, Yun Yomgyo, one of the 10 commanders of the Verdant Forest, says that Yugong is not someone easy to deal with and comments that even though he complained about various delicacies, he ended up eating them all. Hearing this, Lord Yakran puts his hand on his head and says it's impossible to understand what's going on in the minds of those lunatics, then asks Gong Chusang, the leader of the Verdant Forest Elders, how the progress of the cleanup of the Black Dragon Union members' bodies is going. Gong replies that they've already buried all of them and erased all traces they left, which leaves the bearded man relieved, saying that now they should get straight to the point. He asserts that regardless of who those psychopaths are, the important thing is that while they're here, the Verdant Forest will be in a dark period, and it's the forest's duty, for survival, to come up with a plan to eliminate those two. Everyone at the table remains silent, just listening, until one of them says that he already warned that country bumpkin that they are here to discuss the forest's future. But if they take too long in this meeting, he might start getting suspicious. Hearing this, Cheongno Mayo-san, in charge of the forest, raises his hand and says he'd like to ask something. He begins talking about that brat, but quickly Sun corrects him, saying that the brat's name is Yugong. Then Cheongno continues saying that the strategy depends on the strength of Yugong's martial arts and that the stronger his martial arts are, the more they'll have to work hard. Sun asserts that while being with the two, she realized that Yugong isn't all that. Cheongno asks if she's sure, which irritates the girl, who questions if that old fool is calling her a liar and asks why the hell she would make up a lie about it. Seeing that the atmosphere is getting heated, the bearded man intervenes, pointing out that they shouldn't be fighting when they should be joining forces. Then, Cheongno says that the first action they should take is to make Yugong a hostage, and one of them states that it won't be easy, as that giant guy is always glued to him. Lord Yakran then asks if there's any other alternative, and someone suggests preparing explosive traps to blow both of them up at once, which worries the old man, who questions what would happen if Pung wasn't exterminated in the explosion. Imagining the scene, Sun says that in that case, everyone there would have dinner together in hell. Yoon then slams his hand on the table and starts getting up angrily, saying they know nothing and that they should use the Chimen Dunjia formation to trap them, which surprises the bearded man. Standing up, he grabs Yoon by the head and, squeezing hard, asks since when anyone there is capable of doing the Chimen Dunjia formation. The bearded man then starts banging Yoon's head on the table, and seeing the scene, Gong thinks that the verdant forest is really finished. Until Sun Yakran also slams her hands on the table and says she had an idea, asking why they didn't think of that before, making her father and another man, already with an axe in hand to strike Yoon, stop immediately and ask if she has a good plan. With an evil smile, the girl says that they can use the good old poison, leaving her father amazed. Sun explains that they can give Yugong the strongest poison they have, the Crimson Flames poison, and let the poison do its work. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the headquarters, the protagonist quietly drinks his tea and reflects that this is a perfect morning, as the room is comfortable and the food is delicious. If he could, he would stay there forever. It doesn't take long before someone calls him, and he promptly asks them to come in. Then Poong and Sun open the door and the girl, showing respect, says she hopes he is well, calling him young master. This surprises Yugong, who spits his tea back into the cup. Wiping himself off, he asks Poong how many punches he gave Sun for her to be so polite. Poong responds that this time he did nothing and thinks she has finally realized that it's useless to rebel against the master. This makes the protagonist suspicious, so he asks Sun if Cheon forced her to say that. But the girl says that Lord Poong Cheon didn't even touch her, and that the young master should believe in her sincerity when she says she wants to serve him for the rest of her life. This makes the protagonist even more suspicious. But still, he says that the world really does turn, and questions if they are only there to say that. Sun then apologizes for the discourtesy and emphasizes that she is also there to give advice. The protagonist asks what advice that would be. Yakran says that if Yugong truly wants to take full control of the verdant forest, he must get rid of the vice leader, Cheongno Myosun, because he is a cunning man and the current advisor to the king of the forest. On the other hand, the king of the verdant forest is unprepared and irrational. After hearing all of this, the protagonist, irritated, calls her shameless and asks if the king of the forest isn't her father. But the girl responds that to achieve goals, one must let go of personal opinions, so he should listen to the advice of a humble servant. Still irritated, the protagonist thinks that this little brat insults her own father and delivers the verdant forest, something that disgusts him. Quickly, the girl starts to leave, saying she will return if Yugong has a better idea and asks for permission to leave. With that, she exits and closes the door. Promptly, Poong also points out that it would indeed be best to eliminate Cheongno as quickly as possible. And Yu, banging the table, says that Poong thinks of nothing but annihilating people and that he only needs to subdue Cheongno since he could be useful. But Poong remains silent, leaving the protagonist confused, thinking that the big guy will get furious for not letting him eliminate someone. Then he asks what Poong is thinking. The big guy says that not only did he make them bow yesterday using the throne, but he also just ordered him not to annihilate Cheongno. Hearing this, Yu begins to tremble with fear, thinking that Poong will revolt. However, with a smile and showing pride, Cheon says that he is impressed with those actions and emphasizes that the posture shown towards the verdant forest the previous day and the wise decision to see the utility of Myosan today leaves him speechless in admiration. The protagonist, seizing the moment, boasts, saying he's a genius and that he will hit Poong more often to intimidate those around him. The big guy, excited, says he agrees, which intrigues the protagonist, as not only did he survive that bizarre situation where he expected to be executed by the big guy, but apparently he is also being affected by Poong's madness. Then Cheon begins to leave, saying he will talk to Cheongno Myosun. After some time, Sun and another man bring Myosun to speak with Poong. The vice leader, being forcibly led, reflects that even though he knew the plan beforehand, he can't help but be nervous. The day before in the meeting, the forest leader said that they need Cheon's trust to use the poison, and Myosun is the most suitable for this role. So, the vice leader said he would do his best. Meanwhile, Sun, smiling, says he shouldn't worry, as she will distract the big guy as much as she can. Returning to the present, Poong asks him if he plans to use his intelligence for the young master's good. Hesitating to respond, Cheon grabs him by the neck and crushes him with his own hands, while he screams, saying that he accepts the offer. Sun is horrified to see the vice leader being crushed while trying to say that he accepts the offer. After the beating, Myosun says he will do everything for the great young master's good, while Poong points out that he hesitated too much in answering, and that's why he suffered the consequences. And Myosun, all beaten up, is filled with rage for not receiving help from Sun. After some time, in the meeting room, the leader slams the table and says that the mission to sacrifice Cheongno went well, but it didn't feel like a victory. He asks if the vice leader is okay, and one of those present responds that it will be hard for him to move for a while since Poong broke all his bones. The chief comments that at least the vice leader's life was spared and emphasizes that Sun managed to convince the young master of Cheongno's usefulness, saying he is proud of her. This leaves the girl surprised, as she responds not understanding that in fact she asked Yugong to exterminate him, causing everyone at the table to be incredulous. Yakran asks what the problem is, as that would be the only way to make him believe the threat was gone. Moreover, he noticed something during all the time spent with Poong. With a strange look, she says that if she's not up to his expectations, it's over, and the verdant forest will be doomed to tragedy. Immediately, the girl's father puts his hand on his head, saying that he retracts what he said and asks his companion if Yu really never misses a meal. Gong confirms, saying that he always eats like a tied-up animal. Additionally, Poong had dinner with Yugong the previous night, and if that's the case, they can poison both of them at once. This makes the leader question whether Poong wouldn't suspect anything, and Gong, remembering how they eat like madmen, says no. Lord Yakran says that this is excellent and asks if the crimson flame poison is ready, which is quickly confirmed. Then the leader, with an evil smile, says that everything is prepared and that they can begin the Last Supper. Meanwhile, outside the building, the protagonist walks calmly and, noticing Poong behind him, asks if he didn't annihilate Myosun. Even with his clothes covered in blood, Poong replies that he didn't, saying he solved everything with dialogue, which visibly irritates the protagonist, thinking that this scoundrel doesn't even try to disguise the lie, but he'll let it slide for now. Then he tells Cheon that he has a question, and Cheon responds that his master can ask. Yu then states that there must be a reason for taking over the entire verdant forest and wants to know Poong's reason, since he shouldn't become the leader. Cheon responds that it wouldn't be worthy for his master to be the king of the verdant forest. He subdued them because they are in Mount Wutai and destroyed the Black Dragon Union because they could be an obstacle. But the most important thing is that the plan to which the heavenly demon lord Asura dedicated his body and soul is exactly there, in Mount Wutai. This leaves the protagonist stunned with the information. He reflects that there's always a strange reason behind Poong Cheon's actions, and remembering that Sun Yakran is the daughter of the king of the verdant forest, finally realizes that all of this has always been part of that madman's plan. Then he clenches his fist, angry, wondering what his father left for him. With that, he asks Poong seriously what Asura's plan was. Poong, with his head down, apologizes and says he can't reveal anything else. The protagonist becomes even more enraged, questioning what kind of absurdity that is. After all, he is the master. However, Cheon apologizes again, saying he will take care of the useless ones in the forest. Quickly, he disappears in the blink of an eye while the protagonist insists, asking what Azura did before leaving. The next morning, everything seems calm on Mount Wutai. Soon, all the members of the forest are gathered before the big guy, who, confused, asks why they are bringing the food personally. The leader, with a plate in hand, remains silent, with a serious expression, remembering the moment when he saw the plate and, with a smile, said, "It was a beautiful dish of seasoned pig intestines." The cook emphasized that he did his best with that dish, saying that he dedicated so much to it that if someone died from eating too much, it wouldn't surprise him. This makes the leader uncomfortable, and he then says that tomorrow the cook will go home and that he can leave now. Shortly after, he informed Yoon that this was the perfect moment. Without hesitation, Yoon took the poison vial and poured everything into the food. Worried, the leader asked if the poison was really working, and with an evil smile, says that she already tested it on 3 wild boars, and with just 1 drop of it in the water, all 3 lost their lives without making a sound. This excites Yakran, who says that finally this humiliation will end. Returning to the present, he bows with the plate in hand, saying that in the past, he was the king of the verdant forest and that today he is just another servant of Yugong, so he made sure to bring the lunch personally to show his loyalty. Poong listens in silence while the bearded man asks please to let them in before the food gets cold. Cheon then picks up his sashi and, in front of the plate, says that when even someone like the bearded man shows loyalty, he becomes suspicious, so he will taste it to ensure there's no poison. Hearing this, the 3 present nearly wet themselves in fear of what could happen. Meanwhile, Sun, with a smile, uses the sound transmission to tell her father that this is an opportunity, as Yugong is not a martial arts master, and by eliminating Poong, Yugong will become an easy target. The big guy then grabs a piece of the pig intestines and eats. Observing this, the leader begins to smile, watching Poong swallow the food and hoping that he eats plenty of that poison. But suddenly, Chan begins to smile strangely, leaving the bearded man incredulous, as the big guy says that there is no poison and that it's delicious, leaving him satisfied. Hearing these words, the 3 are completely stunned, realizing that Poong has immunity to 10,000 poisons, and that plan is now ruined. Lord Yakran then uses the sound transmission to ask his daughter if Yugong also has immunity to 10,000 poisons, but she remains silent. Terrified, he asks if it's possible that Yugong could be eliminated by that poison, hoping that won't happen, but the girl remains completely stunned, unsure of what to say, thinking that they're doomed, because if Yugong eats it and dies, the verdant forest will disappear from the map. Quickly, she gets an idea and, using the sound transmission again, asks her father to trip and drop the tray, making it seem like an accident. Without hesitation, he does exactly as she asks. However, Poong, with his absurd reflexes, manages to catch the plate before it hits the floor using only his sashi, and quickly holds it with his hands, saying with a smile that the leader should be more careful, and that since this is special food, he will personally deliver it to his master. But the bearded man says no, as he wants to demonstrate his loyalty. Poong notices that the old man is crying and asks why, while the old man, with tears in his eyes, thinks he's crying because God hates him, but responds that it's because he really wants to deliver the master's food personally, to which Pung replies that such loyalty is admirable. However, he approaches with an intimidating look and tells him to hand over the plate before he breaks it in two, using just one hand. With that, the bearded man hands over the plate and, kneeling, thinks that they're really completely screwed. Suddenly, Sun says they can use the antidote, and her father quickly agrees, saying he needs to get it. However, she says they need to destroy all the antidotes. This leaves the old man incredulous, asking what she's thinking, and she responds that, in fact, they should pretend they're also victims of the poison. If they throw the poison in the well to dilute it and disappear with the antidotes, they can avoid suspicion. Sun says it's better for just a few to lose their lives rather than the entire verdant forest, and that she will distract the two fools while her father should jump into the well with the poison. With that, the old man quickly sets off to carry out the plan, while Sun watches Pung tell Yugong that he can eat as much as he wants, as the food is delicious. Then she quickly enters with another plate, saying that the protagonist should eat that one as well. Seeing Yu grab the food, she hopes the plan works. Sun looks back and tells Yoon to quickly eat those seasoned intestines before Yu, surprising him. She says that in this way, both Yugong and the verdant forest will survive. But Yoon, cleverly, tries to disguise it, saying that suddenly he feels a stiff neck. Seeing this, the girl becomes extremely irritated, calling him a damn old man. Then she realizes that the protagonist is about to eat the intestines. Suddenly, she calls out to him with a fake smile, asking if his humble servant can also try that seasoned intestine. This makes both the protagonist and the bodyguard suspicious. Cheon says that Sun is insolent and tells her to stop talking nonsense and get out of there, but she insists, saying that there's plenty on the plate and she just wants a little. Then Pung clenches his fist and says he won't ask again. However, Sun insists, pointing out that they've spent a lot of time together and she's not asking for too much, considering all the friendship they've built. In a quick movement, she goes toward the plate, shouting that she will eat some, and calling Pung a proud jerk. But before she can reach the food, Pung delivers a punch that grazes her, asking how she dares. Immediately, the protagonist intervenes, calling Cheon's attention and saying that he doesn't want a scandal at dinner. With that, the big guy bows and apologizes, and Yu tells Yakran that he will set aside some for her in another plate later, making her thank him for the consideration, thinking that even without eating, she's already done well because, by insisting on grabbing some, neither of them will suspect that they were the ones who poisoned the food. Meanwhile, the protagonist goes back to grabbing his food, saying that it must really be delicious. And without hesitation, he puts it in his mouth and starts chewing, while Sun and Yoon watch anxiously, hoping nothing goes wrong. Instantly, Yu says that it is truly delicious, and that he's not surprised that Yakran wants some of that, until suddenly the king of the forest arrives running, asking if the master is okay. This makes Pung angry again, saying that yet another bug dares to interrupt the master's meal and that he will handle it quickly. Noticing Yu coughing, Qian looks to the side in shock as the master starts coughing up blood and, in the blink of an eye, begins to fall completely unresponsive. With that, Pung quickly uses a technique, pressing Yu's points and holding him, says that he won't let him die like this. He then grabs a pill and puts it in the protagonist's mouth, saying that no matter the cost, he will find a way to detoxify him and later pay for that mistake. After taking the pill, the protagonist makes a faint sound. That is the primordial heart pill, which rivals the Shaolin Grand Restorative Pill and is extremely rare, granted only by the master of the demon cult. While Pung takes care of Yu, the leader says that someone poisoned the well and that 30 of the forest's subordinates were also affected by the poison. Hearing Pung say he has 2 hours, he quickly makes a gesture of respect. Then, the big guy with a sinister look adds that if he doesn't bring a renowned doctor in 2 hours, the verdant forest will cease to exist that day. Even though he is scared, the leader says he understands. Sometime later, at dusk, Namgung informs that tomorrow they will check the verdant forest headquarters, and Murong comments that it is really strange that the Black Dragon Union suddenly disappeared. Pung then asks why the verdant forest kidnapped so many cooks, wondering if they're entering the restaurant business. Jaegel says they'll find out once they get there, and reminds everyone that they're not going there to fight, which Namgung promptly agrees with, saying that after all they're talking about the verdant forest, known as the strongest in history, and even the Black Dragon Union allied with the 7 ghosts of Wuxia because of their power, so simply understanding that situation will be enough. That visit will be interesting. Suddenly, everyone is shocked to see someone shouting that they need a doctor urgently, and Ping asks what the hell is going on and if that is the king of the forest. Namgung tells him to be quiet as the crazy woman who is blowing the whistle is with him. Down below, the bearded man screams desperately, saying they're going to the pit and asking what he should do, while Sun, also shouting, tells her father to calm down and focus on completing the mission, saying he must act with the dignity of the king of the forest. Hearing this, all the men are even more shocked, wondering what the hell is going on. Using sound transmission, one of them says that the girl is the daughter of the king of the verdant forest, questioning whether this king is really the strongest man in the forest. It doesn't take long for a forest member to arrive, informing that they've brought all the doctors. With that, the king starts laughing, saying that now they just need to choose the most skilled ones. Out of nowhere, one of the doctors claims that he's a fraud who learned by spying on real doctors at work. Another, with a strange expression, says that he only became a doctor to end patients' lives. Meanwhile, a third, angry and kicking a box of apples, yells that he isn't even a doctor and works at the market. Soon, the three start arguing among themselves to see who is the worst doctor. The Mountain King, watching this, grabs his axe and orders his men to capture the idiot who brought those three fools there and take him to the mountain, adding that anyone who wants to stay alive should choose skilled people immediately. Observing all the chaos, Namgung points out that first they took all the cooks, and now the doctors, wondering if it's moved from a restaurant to a hospital, and stating that the king of the verdant forest seems to be in good health. This makes him question who exactly needs medical care there. Meanwhile, the protagonist remains unconscious, surrounded by people watching him. The bearded man, seeing him, thinks that, judging by his suffering expression, Yugang must be hanging by a thread, until suddenly Pung starts shouting, asking why the doctors are just standing there watching. Someone then pushes one of the doctors, which irritates Pung. Using sound transmission, he asks who the hell pushed him. Turning around, he sees the king of the forest admitting it was him and asking if there's a problem, leaving the doctor terrified. He quickly changes his behavior and says he will check Yugong's pulse. Rapidly, he begins the procedure while Pung states that if the doctor cannot cure him, no one will leave there alive. Checking the pulse, the doctor responds that the first thing to do is identify which type of poison was used. He then uses a needle to take a sample from the protagonist, explaining that there are over 1,000 types of poisons, and that when mixed, they create thousands of combinations. Pung promptly interrupts him, saying there's no time for explanations. The doctor, with the sample on the needle, places a bit in his mouth, saying that what he's trying to say is that he can identify any poison by taste, but in the blink of an eye, he falls to the ground lifeless, unable to say another word, leaving even Qian shocked by the potency of the poison. The king of the forest then begins to remove the doctor's body, wondering if that idiot truly knew what he was doing. Meanwhile, another doctor starts collecting another sample from the protagonist and, after a few moments, says that this isn't a poison from an animal or a plant, which makes Pung ask what type it is. The old doctor responds that it seems to be a mixture of several types of poisons, and that, since his knowledge on this is limited, he can't say for sure. But even though they avoided immediate danger, the real problem lies in the future, causing Pung to question what he means by that. The old man then states that if they don't find an antidote, the young master will lose his life in less than 3 days. Suddenly, the protagonist opens his eyes and, as a tear rolls down, reflects that his plans for a peaceful life are down the drain, and worse, he won't even see the sun rise by the end of the week. The big guy questions again if the doctor said that Yugang only has 3 days to live, which he confirms. Then Pung, in a somber tone, orders the king of the forest to annihilate all the doctors, and he promptly responds, "Yes, sir," leaving all the doctors completely terrified. The king grabs his axe, scaring them even more, and makes the old doctor fall to his knees, begging for his life. Pung, with his cold gaze, asks why he would allow that, and, leaving the room, tells the king to take the life of that doctor first. Desperate, the old man shouts that he knows the divine doctor, causing the king to stop his axe just millimeters from him. Cheon questions the old man about the divine doctor, and he, still trembling, says that precisely the one who can cure any disease in the world is the divine Dr. Wasion. Immediately, the king says that this is impossible, as Wasion has been gone for a long time, causing the old man to ask if the king saw him lose his life with his own eyes. This leaves the king even more intrigued, pointing out that no one has had any news of him for over 20 years. But the old man, still on his knees, affirms that he saw him and swears on the life of his entire family that he is telling the truth. Cheon then places his hand on his chin, suspicious, and pondering if Waseon can really cure any disease. The old man explains that his abilities make any imperial doctor ashamed, and it's even said that comparing him to Hua Tuo and Bian would be disrespectful to Waseon. Trembling, he begs Cheon not to tell Waseon that it was he who revealed this information, but Pung retorts, saying that he doesn't even know who he is, making the doctor thank him, relieved. The old man then says that Waseon is living at Longchu Peak in the Watervale Valley. Cheon comments that at least it's close and asks the king of the forest to arrange something to carry a body, leaving the three doctors in shock and wondering if the big guy will kill them and wrap their pieces. Quickly, the three bow again, and the old man emphasizes that he is telling the absolute truth, while the other two beg to have their lives spared. But Pung, irritated, tells them to shut up, The king then starts asking Pung why he needs something to carry the bodies, and he explains that he needs to take Yugang with him, so the bearded man should arrange one of those cloths for carrying a baby on his back. Suddenly, the protagonist with difficulty thinks that there's no need to rush, but asks them to be quick, immediately catching Pung's attention, who begins shouting that the master's condition is critical and that he should hurry. This makes the protagonist angry as that's not what he meant, but Pung misunderstands again and even angrier yells that Yugang said the king is going too slowly, making the protagonist even more frustrated and irritated for not being able to communicate properly. Quickly, the king of the forest arrives with the cloth, and Pung helps the protagonist to stand, informing him that they will leave immediately. He then ties Yu onto his back and says he will be very careful so the master can trust him. Pung tightens the knot well, making the protagonist nearly soil himself, but dissatisfied, the big guy tightens it even more, causing Yu to completely soil himself and say that he will suffocate before they even leave in this condition. Sun, standing at the door of the room, looks at Yugong's expression and thinks that this time he really went to meet Jesus, then asks Pung if the master is alive. But the big guy simply ignores the question and tells the protagonist that they are leaving. Without any further ado, Pung jumps out of the room, crashing through the wall and leaving an enormous hole. Seeing the destruction, the king of the forest asks if that's the care Pung said he would take. Sun then asks why Cheon looks so serious, and the king responds that it seems the divine Dr. Waseon is alive and that Pung left to find him and save Yugang. This leaves the girl completely shocked, shouting that they need to go after the two of them. She emphasizes that the verdant forest is doomed if Yugang loses his life before reaching the doctor, and in that case, they will have to live the rest of their lives as loyal servants to Pung. The bearded man is frightened by this idea and promptly agrees, then asks his subordinates to immediately call the entire leadership. Meanwhile, walking through the forest, Namgung tells his companions that there is really no one from the Black Dragon Union around. Peng points out that not only them, but also no one from the verdant forest, seeming like there is not a living soul in the area. Suddenly, they see a flash passing at a colossal speed, leaving them intrigued. Namgung asks what that was, and Jaegel says it looked like a person, but it was going too fast to be human, causing Murong, still astonished, to respond that it must have been a ghost or a wandering soul with something on its back. Moments later, they notice two more figures passing nearby, leaving Namgung even more shocked and questioning if that was another ghost. But Peng responds that it was the king of the verdant forest and his daughter passing by. Then they all look up, and seeing several members of the forest, Peng says that they were all from the forest, which means something strange must be happening. Murong then asks if they will continue walking or if they want to go after the king of the forest. Suddenly, they see more people heading in the same direction, which makes Peng even more curious, asking if there's a fire going on for everyone to be in such a hurry. Namgung, equally intrigued, states that now 7 people in black robes have passed, wondering if they are the 7 ghosts of Wushan. Then Jigal, equally confused, wonders if they are invisible, as all passed by without noticing them. Just then, out of nowhere, they notice someone approaching and quickly look to see who it is. Upon seeing, Namgung is stunned, as he asks what the hell a little kid is doing there. Using sound transmission, he questions why the hell that kid is there, but doesn't matter, since as a member of one of the 5 great clans, he has the duty to help the child. He then tells the boy that he shouldn't be in the forest at this hour as it's dangerous. But suddenly the boy emits a dense and sinister aura and shouts for him to shut up. Immediately, all the members feel the overwhelming pressure and become completely paralyzed. The boy then says that they must answer exactly what he asks and inquires if they saw 7 people in black pass by. Namgung, feeling the immense pressure, wonders how a child can have such a strong murderous intent. But before they can say anything, the boy says they are a bunch of cowards and that today's youth are useless, stating that in his time, it was better. Then he quickly leaves, telling them all to screw off, leaving the 4 men completely stunned, not understanding anything about what just happened. Murong, nervous, asks who the hell that creature was and what is going on, and Namgung asks if they should go after them, which they all promptly agree to. Meanwhile, a little further ahead, the men in black continue moving quickly. The spirit hunter, who's the 3rd of the 7 ghosts of Wushen, asks his older brother how much longer they need to follow those bandits. He continues, saying they went there to help the leader of the Black Dragon Union, but there is no one on the mountain, and no one has ever treated them like this before. Then the ghost that pierces the heavens, who is the 2nd of the 7 ghosts, orders the 3rd to shut up immediately, which he promptly obeys. The 2nd continues, saying that despite everything, he is right, and apparently the Union disappeared suddenly, or maybe the bandits from the verdant forest wiped them out. This makes the 1st ghost laugh, saying that if this were true, there would be a mountain of corpses, and that the leader of the Union is no weak enemy. With that, the 3rd brother apologizes for his nonsense, while the 1st brother says that if the leader of the Union truly lost his life, The bandits will pay a very high price for laying hands on an old friend. Sometime later at dawn, Poong continues his journey, carrying the protagonist on his back, who can barely breathe. He reflects that he really agreed to be taken to the Divine Doctor, but if they continue at this speed, he won't survive. Remembering when he tried to say that there was no need to hurry, he concludes that this time, he needs to speak properly so Poong finally understands. He takes a deep breath and says loudly that he can't breathe, so the big guy should go slower. With this, he smiles proudly, thinking he managed to speak correctly this time. Poong then asks if what he said was that he can't breathe and so they should go slower. However, he speeds up even more, questioning why Yugong would say something so nonsensical, and concluding that maybe because his body is weak, his spirit must have weakened as well. He then turns to the protagonist and yells, telling his master never to show weakness like that again. Meanwhile, the protagonist, struggling even more to breathe, thinks that it will be impossible to survive being squeezed like this, while Cheon again emphasizes that if he can't breathe, they should go even faster, leaving Yu with tears in his eyes and on the verge of having a heart attack. The big guy, noticing that his master fell silent, jumps off a cliff to gain more speed, stating that the silence must be assigned to accelerate even more. Meanwhile, the protagonist tells himself that one day he will rip Poong's organs out with a pair of eyebrow tweezers. At the same time, a little further away, the king of the forest and Sun also jump to gain more speed, accompanied by all the bandits of the forest. Seeing that his subordinates are still following him, he feels relieved to know the area well and having taken a shortcut, as he nearly lost Poong Cheon's trail. Sun, out of nowhere, asks her father where he went before they left on the pursuit, and he retorts asking what she's talking about. The girl then explains that after her father gathered the leadership, he went somewhere else, asking if he had gone to speak with Wang Yok and saying that it's amazing that someone can like that crazy woman. This irritates the bearded man, who affirms that Wang is still his wife and that his daughter should respect her. Sun, with a smile on her face, says that she had forgotten about that and comments that she heard the Divine Doctor is so stubborn that he'd rather die than give in. This further enrages the king of the forest, who shouts that he himself said that, and the girl argues again that she had forgotten about it too. She then asks if he thinks Yugong will hold up. As if the Divine Doctor is as stubborn as a mule, Poong will crush him in the blink of an eye. But the bearded man confidently claims that the Divine Doctor won't die and, with a hidden trump card, says that he will prevent that at any cost. Sun then comments that if Hwaseon really cures Yugong, the verdant forest will be doomed anyway, so he should hurry. With this, the king orders his subordinates to speed up even more as they are almost catching up to Poong. Sometime later on Mount Haiyang at Yongchu Peak, Poong arrives still carrying the protagonist, who, after all that journey, is almost meeting God personally. It doesn't take long until Poong finds an old man gathering herbs near a tree. The old man, noticing the big guy, hears Cheon ask if he knows where Suryum is, but he replies that he doesn't even know what Suryum is. The big guy explains that Suryum is the name of a valley, but the old man again says that he has no idea and that he's there just to gather some herbs. Cheon then asks if he's heard of the divine Dr. Hwaseon, to which he responds that he didn't even know there was a divine doctor. The big guy then turns and starts to leave, saying that the old man is ignorant. In the blink of an eye, he disappears, and the old man, who continues to gather his herbs, soon notices more people approaching, leaving him confused. It doesn't take long for the king of the forest, carrying Sun, to start approaching. The old man asks what the hell that is, and the king of the forest asks if he knows where the Suryum Valley is. The old man again says that he doesn't know anyone by that name there, which irritates the bearded man, who starts shouting, saying that it's the name of a valley, the place where the divine doctor lives, while Sun says that the old man must be losing his mind. With that, they quickly leave, saying that the old man is really useless. The old man, watching them leave, comments that this day is going from bad to worse. He then begins walking, saying that he will gather more herbs on the other side until, looking ahead, he encounters other men intimidating him. The old man looks carefully at one of their expressions and quickly says that there is no Suryum Valley on Mount Haiyang. The man remains silent while the old man continues saying that he also doesn't know any divine doctor and that he just wants to gather herbs in peace. The man then laughs and asks where the leather-clad guys went. The old man points to the side, and without hesitation, the men continue their pursuit quickly. Immediately after they leave, the demonic boy appears, and the old man quickly points to the side, saying that if he's looking for Suryum Valley, however, the boy simply ignores him, looks the other way, and, bumping into the old man, leaves immediately. At the same time he leaves, more men arrive, this time the 4 partners from the strong clans, and before they could ask for any information, the old man has an outburst and starts shouting, asking why the hell everyone is bothering him, as he already told them that there is no Suryum Valley and that he doesn't know any divine doctor. Seeing all that anger, Namgung is startled and looks back, commenting on the divine doctor in the valley. With that, they thank the elder and return to the pursuit. After all of this, the old man throws his basket to the ground, furious, and, removing his hat, states that those are a bunch of idiots from the verdant forest and the Murim family, along with the 7 guys in black robes and that devilish boy. However, the most dangerous of them all was the big guy with the empty gaze. The elder concludes that the situation is getting complicated and, without another word, quickly leaves the place, saying that it's time to abandon Mount Hyang. Sometime later in the beautiful valley, the protagonist reflects that Hyangsun is indeed a very beautiful place, with large pine trees everywhere and a spectacular waterfall. However, it's a shame that Poong doesn't care. Struggling to stay alive, Yu thinks that he hasn't stopped running for a minute since dawn and feels like his head is going to explode. Cheon, however, asks his master to hold on, emphasizing that he won't let him lose his life. But the protagonist, almost meeting Jesus, thinks to himself that in reality, it's Poong who is killing him. After a few moments, the big guy finally lands, saying that since many people are working together, they should bring good news soon. The protagonist, hearing this, wonders about the many people, until he notices that all the members of the verdant forest are in front of him. Poong then asks if they found Suryam Valley, and the leader answers that unfortunately not, making Poong angry and calling them useless. The leader then kneels and apologizes. Suddenly, Cheon notices someone approaching and, seeing a group of people above, shouts for everyone to stop immediately. They quickly land, and Chuangkeo, the third ghost, pointing his sword, warns that the first one who tries to run will be torn apart. But suddenly, someone puts a hand on his shoulder and asks him to calm down. The leader of the forest immediately recognizes those men. Then, Muwangwi, the first ghost, says they are not there to fight, but depending on the answer they get, they will decide whether or not to get involved. This leaves the bearded man confused, causing him to ask what Muwangwi is talking about. He then says that they didn't see the Black Dragon Union on Mount Ota, and asks if, by chance, the verdant forest has made peace with the Union. Immediately, the leader reflects that in fact they are at peace, but in hellish peace. However, it's not time to worry about the 7 ghosts of Wushan, as Poong Cheon is even more impatient due to Yugang, and if he gets angrier, the forest will end up like the Black Dragon Union. This makes him think about what he should do, until suddenly Sun states that they are all in the pit, almost causing her father to have a heart attack. But she continues, asking if the ghost didn't hear that all the members of the Black Dragon Union are eating grass by the root. This enrages the first ghost, who claims that insulting the leader of the union, a personal friend, is the same as insulting him, so he expects the girl to have a better joke than that. However, Sun, with her devilish expression, asks if he'd prefer that she tells the joke about the chick that was born without an anus, and, when trying to fart, exploded. Immediately after this joke, the third ghost charges at her, angrily calling her an insolent brat. The girl's father immediately grabs his axe, while Poong, furious, screams loudly, telling everyone to shut up. The shout releases an unbelievably strong pressure, causing Chuangkeo to feel an agonizing pain in his chest and wonder what kind of technique that is. Seizing the moment, Sun says she regrets, but the leader of the Black Dragon Union really went from this plane to the higher plane, and that, while he was fleeing like a coward, Lord Poong Cheon personally went after him and ground him like a meat grinder. She then turns to Cheon and asks if it's not true. The leader of the forest, observing his daughter's attitude, deduces that she must be trying to make Poong and the 7 ghosts break apart. The first ghost then asks if that's really true, and after a few seconds of silence, Poong says he remembered something and asks if maybe that old man. Meanwhile, everyone remains silent, waiting for Poong's response. And the protagonist, using sound transmission, tells the big guy that he also suspected the old man who was gathering herbs. He points out that the old man remained calm and didn't flinch, even with Poong's terrifying look, which doesn't make sense. With this, the big guy turns around and tells the ghost to leave, that they'll solve this later. Then Sun, seizing the opportunity again, points to them and asks if the ghost heard properly, calling them idiots and saying they should get out of there because Lord Poong said he will spare their pathetic lives this time. This leaves Muwangwi completely enraged, but before he could react, everyone was already leaving. Sometime later near the waterfall, the protagonist doesn't notice the old man passing in the background, but remembers seeing him in that area, and considering the waterfall, Suryam Valley seems like a good choice. Quickly, Poong crosses the waterfall, soaking the protagonist and making him even more frustrated. In any case, the big guy keeps walking until, slightly, the protagonist notices something that catches his attention. As looking ahead, he thinks that place, surrounded by cliffs on all sides, would make for a perfect hideout. Suddenly, he sees 2 men kneeling at the feet of an old man ahead, begging him for something. One of the men asks how a divine envoy could abandon someone who is dying, pleading for the old man to save his son, while the other begs for the life of his daughter, saying that she suffers from an incurable chronic illness. However, the old man ignores them and looks to the side. Then Pung says that they apparently found the divine doctor. It doesn't take long for more footsteps to be heard, and the forest members finally arrive and approach Pung. Waseon then looks at everyone and makes a disgusted expression. Angrily, he asks the two kneeling at his feet to move away, as he has decided not to treat martial artists, stating that he, the divine doctor, made this vow to the heavens and intends to die before breaking it. Observing the scene, Cheon says that this dedication is impressive, and the king of the forest comments that they say not even the four heavenly kings can defeat the divine doctor. Pung retorts, saying that the four heavenly kings don't compare to him, leaving the king upset. With a bloodthirsty look, Cheon asserts that he will start by cutting off the doctor's legs, as he only needs his hands to heal someone. Initially not paying much attention, the king agrees, but quickly realizes what was said, and, shocked, asks what Pung just said. However, the big guy ignores him and approaches the doctor, asking him to take care of his master, pointing out that he has only 3 seconds to decide. With every refusal, he will lose a leg. Hearing that, the doctor quickly stares at him seriously and releases a strong aura facing Pung, who also emits a dark aura. The big guy then starts the countdown, drawing his sword, and Waseon says that he doesn't intend to break the vow he made. Pung finishes his countdown and prepares to strike. With that, the two men who had been pleading for their children rush at him, throwing daggers and saying that he cannot harm the divine doctor. Pung observes the incoming attacks and effortlessly parries one of them. However, the other continues advancing to attack him hand to hand. Cheon quickly jumps and dodges the attack and, still in the air, prepares his sword, but before he can strike, he notices something. Looking back, he sees another man preparing to strike using a palm technique. Without hesitation, the man charges, and Pung also advances without fearing the blow, causing a colossal collision and being thrown away. Meanwhile, observing the fight, the king of the forest, completely shocked, reflects that this is a true battle between two monsters. One of the men, impressed by Pung's defense, asks his companion how that is possible, while Cheon, on the other hand, only asks Yugong if he's okay. The protagonist, visibly shaken and almost saying goodbye to this world, can't answer. Suddenly, the doctor tells the great patriarch Guimun and Master Guansan that they don't need to interfere. But one of them responds that if they hadn't interfered, the big guy would have cut the doctor's legs off. The other agrees, emphasizing that he can't die before saving his daughter. Meanwhile, Waseon reflects that the great patriarch Guimun, who, when he unleashes all his power, quickly annihilates his opponent, and Master Guansan, who has enough power to rival the 7 great sects, are here, along with a man who survived deadly poison. Pung then tells the protagonist that he can rest easy because once the old man finishes the treatment, he will immediately end his life. On the other hand, the doctor says that apparently everyone there desperately wants him to break his vow. Sun, as crazy as always, starts shouting, calling him a crazy old man and asking why he made such a vow, as she doesn't care about his reasons, and he should just heal Yugong once and for all. However, the doctor, clenching his fist, says they have no idea, and that 25 years ago, a middle-aged man came to him with severe injuries, and he did his best to save him. The man seemed like an honorable martial artist, and he thought it would be a shame if he died. However, after being healed, he massacred everyone in his path, whether martial artists or innocent civilians, and by saving one life, he condemned hundreds of others to death. Since then, he made a vow never to get involved in martial conflicts again and that he would abdicate his life before treating another martial artist. Hearing the story, the protagonist wonders if the divine doctor will really end up losing his life that way. The old man continues, saying that apparently, everyone desperately wants his help, so, since he has no choice, he will act soon. With that, one of the two powerful men says that he has finally given up on his vow. Suddenly, Waseon, pointing his fist at himself, says that he will fulfill his vow and end his own life, leaving everyone completely shocked. He then concentrates and, without hesitation, strikes himself with a powerful punch. But before he could land the blow, he realizes that he cannot execute it and notices that someone used a gust of wind to block his pressure points, preventing him from moving. Pung, after easily blocking the doctor's pressure points, says that he cannot go to the grave without his master's permission, leaving the protagonist once again filled with rage, questioning mentally whether he looks like a death bureaucrat. Suddenly, Pung looks at Guansan and Guimun and says that unnecessary obstructions will be eliminated, catching both by surprise. He begins to approach, while the protagonist, desperate, wonders if Cheon will really spare only the divine doctor, calling him an idiot and pointing out that the only sin of those two guys was trying to heal their children. Suddenly, someone moves quickly using a tree and the 3 ghosts appear, ready to attack, asking how Pung dares to ignore them. However, the big guy, with all the calm in the world, grabs one of them by the head and throws him against the other 2 ghosts with colossal force, nearly causing the first ghost to meet Jesus personally. Immediately, Guansan and Guimun are stunned. commenting that this crazy guy defeated the ghosts in one go. As the ghosts writhe in pain on the ground, Poong approaches with his devilish presence and says that he warned them to leave. He starts to draw his sword, but before he can use it, Yugong calls him. Poong promptly responds, and Yu asks him not to eliminate anyone there, including the two who had been begging for their children. Noticing that the big guy didn't respond, the protagonist demands that he say something. He then sheathes his sword, saying that he understood the master's order, which leaves the protagonist relieved. However, Poong, still angry, asks if he just needs to deal with everyone without them losing their lives, making the first ghost even more terrified. Sometime later, still at the same place, the ghosts are quickly piled up, completely unconscious, while Guanson wonders what kind of martial art that is. With an awkward smile, he comments that it was very impressive and even surprised him. Poong begins to walk calmly and, grabbing the doctor by the neck, asks him to treat his master. Observing the scene, Sun gets excited and says that Hwa Seon better not poke that short-tempered beast, or it will be worse for him. However, the doctor, unshaken, says that there is no problem, as he has lived a long life and has no regrets. He then states that Poong can take his legs, his liver, eat them with onions, and do whatever he wants, because he won't break his vow, leaving Cheon completely furious and filled with rage. He then begins to draw his sword, making everyone tense, while the doctor thinks that he will really lose his life there. But Poong, calling him calmly, bows and earnestly asks him to take care of Yugong. This leaves the king, his daughter, and the protagonist completely shocked, unable to believe that the big guy actually bowed to someone. Noticing Sun crying, the king asks why, and she says that she's never seen anything like it, pointing out that her father should also be crying. Meanwhile, the doctor, once again pointing his fist to his own head, says that this was boring and that apparently the young man on Poong's back is the most important thing to him. But he himself also has something he values greatly, so he cannot treat the young man. With this, he says that Poong can eliminate him without any problems. With this attitude, Cheon becomes enraged again and approaching, apologizes for what he is about to do. He places his hand on the old man's head and says that his master gave an order not to kill him, so he won't do it, but it will be interesting to discover how much pain he can endure. Suddenly, the king of the forest appears, shouting for him to wait, and says that this is not something that Poong Cheon, a worthy man, can do recklessly. The big guy then releases the old man's head, leaving him confused, and the king continues, asking Cheon to give him 1 hour, assuring that he will get the antidote, pointing out that the torture of the demon cult doesn't even compare to that of the verdant forest. Poong responds that he finds that comparison offensive, and the king, fearful, explains that he only tried to say that he's confident in the skills he possesses. The big guy then turns his back, saying that he has 1 hour, and if he fails, both the doctor and the verdant forest will end up in the same grave 6 feet under. The king then responds loudly, saying that a mission given is a mission fulfilled. Sometime later in the Suryum cabin, Hwaseon is brutally thrown against the wall. Sun asks her father if this is his strategy to extract information. As in the verdant forest, the strategy has always been to beat people up. The old man, hearing this, says that they won't get the antidote with beatings. One of the forest members suggests using a hot iron, and Sun, rushing in, tells her father that if it's to break the doctor, he should hurry, as they only have 1 hour. She then tries a powerful kick, but at the last moment, the old man is pushed back, dodging the attack. This irritates the girl, and she promptly asks the king of the forest why he saved the old man, but he ignores her question and, firing something that strikes the old man in the neck, warns that he needs a minute to think. After a few moments, he begins to take something from his pocket, and Yakran asks what he is doing, and if, by any chance, he put the old man to sleep in the middle of an interrogation. Suddenly, the bearded man shows a liquid and says that this is the antidote for the scarlet poison, leaving everyone present in shock and making Sun question if he hadn't thrown it away. The king explains that he had intended to throw it away, but decided it was better to keep it just in case. Yakran, curious, asks if it took him long to get the antidote before they came here. Hearing this, one of the forest members becomes desperate, saying that if Poong Cheon finds out, everyone there will be eating grass by the root before sunset, so they need to get rid of it. But, looking ahead, he notices a bizarre expression on Sun and the king's faces, and, sweating cold, asks why they are looking at him like that. Gong then says that it doesn't make sense for the divine doctor to give in and give them the antidote, so someone will need to take a beating to make Cheon believe that the interrogation was real. Quickly, the man is grabbed, and the king thanks him for volunteering for this, pointing out that he should scream as desperately as possible. Before he could say more, Yakran charges at him, leaving the man completely terrified. As the girl beats him, Gong tells the king that it's better to change the antidote's container just to be sure, and the king promptly agrees. After an hour of beating, the man is completely crushed on the floor, and Sun, smiling, says that this helped relieve the stress, and that they shouldn't worry, as the external damage was minimal. The girl's father, irritated, deduces that she must have been accumulating anger for a long time. After all of this, they change the antidote's container while the divine doctor remains unconscious. Then, the king begins to speak loudly, saying that Waseon came to his senses and informed them that the poison affecting Lord Yugong is the Crimson Flame poison. He continues, saying that the doctor realized he wouldn't be able to endure the beating and made the medicine for the Lord. With that, the king imagines that if Puung is as good at sensing qi as they say, he must have heard that. He then continues, saying that now he will repay the master's cooperation and reduce the pain he's feeling. After all the theater, the king leaves the cabin and soon encounters Cheon, who approaches and asks if what he heard is true, while Guimun is stunned that the old man was forced through torture, and Guansen comments that he thought the verdant forest only had brutes who solved everything through fighting, but he must have been mistaken. The king, confident, asks if they really thought the forest bandits only used brute force, but inwardly he thinks those men are right. With that, Pung removes the protagonist from his back and after sitting him down asks for the antidote from the bearded man. Then, without hesitation, the king hands over the medicine and Pung immediately begins shouting, saying that he wishes 1,000 years of prosperity, a long life, good health, and great fame for Yugong. He extends his hand and says that he hopes his master can recover and gain eternal power. While the protagonist, hearing all those words, remains irritated and awkward, he takes the antidote and without thinking twice, drinks it, immediately feeling the positive effects on his body. Concentrating, he notices that the pressure compressing his veins is easing, and if it weren't for Yongdan's inner qi and Pung Qian protecting him, he really wouldn't be alive at that moment. Pung then asks the others to stand guard while he transfers Chui to accelerate the master's recovery. After everyone takes their positions, he begins the transfer, quickly eliminating the impurities from the protagonist's body. After the procedure, Cheon explains that all the clots were expelled as well as all the other blockages, and Yu responds that he's feeling better now. However, moments later, he begins to feel an enormous hunger and hears his stomach growl, reflecting that, thinking about it, it's been 3 days since he last ate anything. Cheon then informs them that they will return to the mountain fortress and should prepare to depart. He crouches and asks permission to carry Yu on his back, but he quickly declines, saying he will walk calmly. However, as he stands up, he feels a general weakness and nearly faints, but Pung catches him, pointing out that he is still weak, while Yu reflects that God must really hate him. Pung then puts him back on his back and calls everyone to leave, quickly heading towards the fortress. It doesn't take long until they reach the waterfall again, once more soaking the protagonist. They quickly cross the waterfall, encountering a beautiful night, which makes the protagonist reflect and tell himself that now that he's no longer in danger, everything seems even more beautiful. With a smile on his face, he concludes that now, with the chance to recover his strength, he will appreciate and value the world more. Back at the mountain fortress during a feast, Yu reflects that food tastes even better when shared with good company, as it becomes a delicacy on its own, unlike the meals with the verdant forest. Suddenly, Pung interrupts his thoughts with a slap on the table and a shout, announcing that they can eat. With that, everyone quickly starts devouring the food, trying to eat as fast as they can, swallowing without chewing, until the king of the forest declares that it's not poisoned and that they can now eat with good appetite. Watching the scene, the protagonist reflects that this is a shame, as he really wishes they would all sit on the devil's lap soon. While having his meal, Yu thinks that it's been a week since he got rid of the poison, and that he's recovering well in the verdant forest. Despite Pung saying he prepared for much more poison, he never imagined he would get so nauseous to the point of losing his appetite. Suddenly, one of the forest bandits says he has something to report, catching the attention of the protagonist and Pung, who immediately asks what it is. He then informs them that his subordinates found a wolf while patrolling, but this wolf was eating one of the corpses from the Black Dragon Union that they buried. Upon hearing this, the protagonist immediately goes into shock, and Xian says it might be because of the rain 3 days ago. The man replies that, in fact, they reburied everyone once the ground dried up. Sun then asks if it's not better to eliminate all the wolves at once, visibly angering the protagonist. Hearing the girl say that the wolves could become a food source, even Pung closes his eyes and wonders what the hell he's doing there. Listening to all this chatter, the protagonist stops eating, thinking that they need to change the course of the conversation. Then the big guy asks if the food isn't to his master's liking, and he, grabbing a drink, says he already ate enough in the morning, so it's better to go slow, but he can only thank the divine Dr. Waseon. Taking the drink, he tells Cheon that one day, they need to visit the doctor to thank him personally, and upon hearing this, the king of the forest and his daughter nearly have a heart attack. Cheon questions why they would do that, pointing out that treating his master is the greatest honor anyone can have, which the king quickly agrees with. And Sun also affirms that surely Waseon had wet dreams just because he took care of a great master. Shaking and sweating, the bandit starts talking about the doctor, while the king, irritated, uses sound transmission to say that if they meet again, it will be a very risky conversation. And Sun also takes the opportunity to draw the bandit's attention to what he's about to say. The bandit, remembering the beating he took, just says that the doctor is a very bad person. Without hesitation, Sun throws a plate, hitting the bandit's face squarely and finishing him off. Quickly, both she and the king begin to beat the man, while Sun says that he cannot disrespect the Lord Savior and asks Yugong to wait a little, as they need to beat this idiot so he learns his lesson. While the chaos unfolds at dinner, the protagonist looks out the window wishing that Hwa-seon is doing well. At the same time, in the cabin, screams are heard and Hwa-seon, tied up, is visibly injured and furious. Beating him, Gwimin says he's already been beaten by the verdant forest, so he might as well stop being stubborn. And Gwansun adds that if he's already given them the antidote, why doesn't he help them as well? But the doctor, still with his head down, says it was all a lie from them and swears he didn't make any medicine. He remembers the forest member, who was beaten to simulate the torture he was supposed to undergo, and reflects that not even that man, who left 4 days ago with his neck twisted, believed him. It's been a week since they've been torturing him, and he wonders where the young man hiding is and why he lied, suspecting that it's the work of the brute. While he thinks, Gwansun says he will take the lead in the investigation now. Suddenly, they hear a noise at the cabin door, and when they look back, they see the bizarre boy, who asks which one of them is Hwa-seon. Observing the boy, the two become apprehensive, as they hadn't felt his approach, meaning he must be a great master. Soon, the doctor says he is Hwa-seon, and the boy, disappointed with himself, says he knew the old herbalist was the doctor. He then says he will ask only 2 questions. First, he asks how the young man who came seeking a cure is doing. Hwa-seon doesn't answer and simply lowers his head, so Gwimon informs him that the young man has been cured. The boy then asks what his illness was, and Gwimon says they called the illness crimson flame poison. Hearing this, the boy starts reflecting that there are only 3 places that can produce this poison: the Sichuan Tong clan, the Poison clan, and the Huayong Valley. But considering that the target was the young master, there's a possibility the poison was smuggled, and if that's the case, some high-ranking official of the demon cult must be involved, so he needs to inform the cult quickly. After his reasoning, he asks if he should bother eliminating all of them, which shocks the 2 fools, making them reflect if the boy is really considering eliminating all the places that produce crimson flame poison. Then the boy begins to leave, congratulating the doctor for what he did, emphasizing that the young man he saved really can't die. However, the old man responds that he wasn't the one who cured the young master. The boy, happy that Yugong is alive, says he doesn't need to be so modest, leaving the old man incredulous, as he's trying to tell the truth. After the boy leaves the cabin, silence prevails for a brief moment, and soon Gwansun says that now they can return to what they were doing. Gwimon smiles, saying that it's marvelous that the divine doctor really broke his oath. Suddenly they notice something and wonder if more people are arriving, and indeed several people begin to arrive at the location. One of them is the solitary bamboo merchant who informs the celestial fragrance fairy that he arrived first, which she agrees with, pointing out that as long as the divine doctor is treating, it doesn't matter who arrived first. Meanwhile, Hwa-seon senses that there must be about 20 people around, and if they are all behind him, then they must have very serious illnesses. They will certainly make him go through things even worse than those 2 idiots in front of him. He reflects that whether he treats these people or not is irrelevant. The fate of the young man who was here before was death, and he has personally seen what someone who escapes death can do to others. With that, he calls the 2 forward and asks if they are sure that the illness of their loved ones wasn't caused by a conflict between martial artists. Gwansun quickly affirms that he guarantees it and even bets on it, just like Gwimon does. The old man then says that in that case he will treat them, but this time the payment will be high. With a serious expression and a somber tone, he says that the price for the service is the life of the young man who was here a week ago. This leaves the 2 apprehensive, and Gwimun says that he understands the doctor is trying to prevent a new tragedy, like the one from 25 years ago. Gwansun concludes by asking how he can ask for the death of someone who is not an enemy, but then stops and thinks better. He says that if this is the only way, he and Gwimun can share the price he charged and hire professionals to do this service. Hwa-seon says that's acceptable and asks if they will hire skilled assassins. Gwansun says yes, pointing out that they are so silent and stealthy that no one will even know they were there. They appear and disappear like true ghosts and are called the Tomb Ghosts. Sometime later, with the plan in motion, the ghosts, up in the trees, observe 2 members of the verdant forest walking calmly. One of them says they should take a break, as when they return to Cheongchae, they'll arrange work for them, and the other replies that if they get caught doing nothing, the captain will send them to hell, so it's better to keep walking. While the 2 converse, the ghosts move forward without hesitation, capturing and knocking out the two with ease. One of the ghosts informs the 7th and 10th that they should disguise themselves and infiltrate through the verdant forest road as planned, carefully assess the situation, and complete the mission, retreating as soon as possible. With that, the two respond that they understand. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the protagonist, meditating, reflects that meditating and calming his mind make those blood clots seem insignificant. Regardless of everything, he still refuses to accept his fate as the leader of the demon cult. With tears in his eyes, he thinks he should have said it out loud, but everyone says that this is his destiny. However, everyone should have the freedom to choose what they want to do in this damn life. Yu remembers failing twice in his attempts to escape, and if he tries to escape again, it might be worse than a puppy getting lost in a tiger's den. But maybe, who knows, the puppy could end up being stronger than the tiger. With that, he thinks he doesn't need to fear anything if he can master the art of discipline, and concludes that he will gain his freedom once he gets his father's approval. Suddenly, someone interrupts him, shouting that the time has come and wishing the protagonist a happy birthday, immediately causing him an absurd pain. He falls to the ground, reflecting that his energy is dissipating and offending Pung. He wonders how he can scream like that in the dead of night. While Pung continues shouting and wishing him a happy birthday, Yu, crawling, thinks that if this continues for 5 more minutes, his birthday will turn into a funeral. Nearly passing out, he tries to stay strong, trying to avoid his end, until Pung excitedly reaches him, congratulating him on his 19th birthday. But he quickly sees the protagonist nearly embracing Jesus and is shocked, rushing immediately to lift him up and explaining that Yu's internal chi is flowing in reverse, so he will take care of it right away. With that, Xion places his hand on the protagonist's back and starts healing him, saying that if he had taken any longer, it could have been dangerous. The protagonist, visibly irritated, thinks that this only happened because the idiot started yelling in the middle of the night. Pung, trying to show support, says he needs to pay attention to where he meditates, making the protagonist even angrier and asking God for patience, because if he asks for strength, he might end up annihilating that fool. It doesn't take long before Pung finishes the healing process and wishes Yugang a happy birthday again, asking him to follow him outside as there will be a celebration. He begins to leave, while Yu remains furious, thinking that the celebration almost made him eat grass by the roots, but decides to see how the celebration is going. As he leaves the room, the king immediately greets him, and all the forest members also wish long life to the young master, wishing him much happiness. Pung is happy with this, while the protagonist shows no excitement at all. He starts walking, grumbling, while the big guy says his name will be remembered forever. The young master sits on the throne and confirms that his name will indeed be remembered forever, especially on that day, when he completes another year of life. Then he says that unfortunately on this day of celebration, someone tried to kill him, leaving Pung on alert, questioning how anyone dared such a thing and asking him to reveal who it was, as he himself will take care of it. The protagonist then explains that before entering the room, he was performing a crucial energy circulation, and it was at that moment that some idiot screamed at the top of his lungs about a party. Startled, it sounded like they were shouting that they were going to celebrate his death, and at that instant, his chi went into reverse, causing a near-fatal shortness of breath. With that, he almost became one of the unfortunate ones who go to talk to God on their own birthday. With a mischievous smile, he says that if Pung hadn't entered the room, that's exactly what would have happened, then asks if he has any idea who almost killed him. This leaves Pung completely shocked, avoiding looking at the master who, irritated, grabs the throne and throws it hard at Pung, shouting if he's happy now with this big birthday party. Qian, frustrated, stands still and silent while Yu, still furious, says he's had enough of the party and that they will talk the next morning. With that, he begins to leave the place while everyone remains in complete silence.